Chapter 3104, Small Farmyard 1. It was precisely because of this mentality that the kindergarten was able to hold such parent-child activities once every semester, and it lasted for a long time. On the day of the event, other than Lung Ruoxia's family, who seemed to be very calm as if they were out for an outing, the other parents were very nervous. Not only did they bring many items in big and small bags, some parents even brought wireless navigation devices. Looking at their reactions, then looking at herself and the demon who were empty-handed and not even carrying a bag, while the three of them were carrying a small bag, Lung Ruoxia suddenly felt that she had been very irresponsible. However, she couldn't say that her sister had a storage ring and didn't need those things. So she and the evildoer could only stand aside and silently endure the rolling eyes of some parents who did not know the truth. Of course, most of the eye rolls came from women. Most of the women would think that she was an irresponsible mother. The evildoer had also received some disdain from his fathers. The fathers' thoughts were the exact opposite of the mother's. They all felt that the evildoer had not been a good father. Fortunately, both Lung Ruoxia and the demon had already trained their skin to be very thick. Hence, they were able to remain as calm as ever under the watchful eyes of the crowd. As for the three children, they received sympathy. Many parents felt that these three cute little children were too pitiful. Their mothers didn't love them, and their fathers didn't love them. Fortunately, the three of them didn't understand what the others were thinking. Otherwise they would have shouted, "I don't need you to meddle in my business. This is how we get along in our family. Besides, they're not little kids. Do they need to rely on their parents for everything?" The three self-proclaimed independent eyes did not need anyone's sympathy. That was an insult to their noble bloodline. The strong didn't need the pity of others, and the future strong would be the same. As the saying goes, the poor's children grow up early. So what if it was a child of a god? The three of them knew very well that from the moment they became the children of their parents, their birth had determined that they could not be like ordinary human children, who would surround their parents all day, act coquettishly, cry, and have runny noses. They were future powerhouses, and their starting point was high from birth. Thus, they were destined to be extraordinary from a young age. At this moment, deep in the mountains, due to the strong wind that blew from time to time, some of the timid children were already crying in fear. Only three of them looked normal, and they didn't even throw themselves into their parents' arms, which made the three of them even more extraordinary. Many of the parents present had noticed this. They were quite envious, jealous, and hateful of this child. How did he raise this child? How could he be so calm and composed? Although they were envious, the gap between their children and other people's children was not just a little bit. Thinking of this, many parents who hoped for their children to become successful made up their minds. In the future, they must not dote on their children without principles. Otherwise, what would they do if they raised their children into the second generation of useless people? After this parent-child activity, many children would live in misery in the future, and the three of them were not aware of it at all. This was the aftermath of the parents seeing the gap between them and other children. What were the three of them doing at this time? They were already urging their parents to set off. The three of them didn't want to stand there and receive the so-called sympathetic gazes that would make them feel like they had failed as gods. Would a future powerhouse need the sympathy of ordinary humans? Lung Ruoxia and the evil demon had wanted to leave for a long time. Now that their sons were urging them, the couple turned around and left with their sons. This mountain was located on the outskirts of the city, and was considered a barren mountain that had not been developed by humans. Although Lung Ruoxia did not understand why the kindergarten would choose this place as the parent and child activity venue, she was certain that there was definitely no manner here. Or rather, there was no proper manner here. If the so-called manner that the other party was talking about was the one she had scanned with her divine sense, then it really couldn't be considered a manor. At best, it could only be considered a small farmyard. At the thought of this, Lung Ruoxia was a little speechless. Did they get played by the kindergarten? Leaving these children and their parents here and not caring about them. Wasn't he afraid that they would encounter large beasts in the mountains? After her divine sense scan, she knew better than anyone else that there were many fierce beasts in this mountain. She even heard from the beasts' language that some of them were saying that a human fool had come to their door again. He wondered how the parents would feel if they knew that they were treated like fools by the beasts. In any case, she didn't want to treat a certain beast as a fool. Out of humanitarian concerns, Lung Ruoxue kindly turned around and reminded the parents before she left. Be careful. There should be many large beasts in this mountain. Don't disturb them. Originally, Lung Ruoxue had good intentions. Unfortunately, a considerable number of parents didn't believe her words. According to the parents' thoughts, this was just a barren mountain, so how could there be a large ferocious beast? If there were, how would the kindergarten dare to let them come here? Wouldn't that be sending them to their deaths? It was precisely because they did not take Lung Ruoxue's warning seriously that the parents did not take the potential danger to heart. Furthermore, there were many small paths in the mountain. In order to prove their strength, only 6 pairs of parents chose to follow behind Lung Ruoxue and her husband. Most of the parents did not take the same path as Lung Ruoxue's family of 5. Seeing how willful they were, Lung Ruoxue could only let them be. Along the way, the couple took the 3 children and looked around as if they were on an outing. They were very relaxed. The parents who had chosen to follow them could not help but scoff in their hearts when they saw them like this. They couldn't help but think to themselves, don't they know that this is also a competition? He actually had the leisure to look at the scenery. Due to their competitive nature, there were quite a few times when the parents of the 6 pairs walked in front of Lung Ruoxue's family. Lung Ruoxue and the demon didn't mind at all. When it was time to play, they would play. When it was time to rest, they didn't delay at all. On the other hand, the 6 pairs of parents were exhausted after a short while because they had walked too fast and too hurriedly. At this time, Lung Ruoxue's family of 5 had overtaken them. Just like that, Lung Ruoxue and the 6 pairs of parents took turns to walk in front. In the end, the 6 pairs of parents couldn't move anymore, and could only follow behind slowly. However, at this moment, Lung Ruoxue and the demon brought the children and walked faster and faster. They didn't show any signs of fatigue. The dog-tired parents who followed behind them were really angry and jealous, but they really couldn't keep up with the other party, so they could only stare helplessly. Very quickly, Lung Ruoxue and the demon brought the 3 of them and disappeared without a trace. The parents who had been left far behind only had one thought in their minds at that moment. And that was that his physical fitness was really good. He walked in the mountains as if he was walking on flat ground. It can't be compared. By noon, Lung Ruoxue and the demon had already brought the children to the small farm. Chapter 3105, Small Farmyard 2. The owner of the small farmyard was a man in his 30s with an ordinary appearance. When he saw Lung Ruoxue, the demon, and the 3 of them, he was clearly stunned for a long time before he reacted. Are you here to participate in parent-child activities? The man was both shocked and surprised. He really didn't expect that a child's parent would find this place so quickly. Moreover, this couple gave him a feeling that they were quite unfathomable. This was really too incredible. However, even though he was surprised, he did not show it on his face. Lung Ruoxue, on the other hand, glanced at the man and nodded. Although the man in front of her was an ancient martial arts practitioner, she still did not think that he could protect so many parents in this barren mountain full of wild beasts. If something happened, he would not be able to split himself up. Even though Lung Ruoxue had such thoughts in her heart, she also knew that this had nothing to do with her. Hence, after nodding her head, she directly asked, "We're here now, so we should be in time for lunch. The children are all hungry." Hearing this, the man was a little confused. From what he heard, this pair of parents had specially brought their children here early to make a living. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, the man weakly replied, "Sure, but it's in the middle of nowhere. There's really nothing to entertain us with." "It's okay. There are many ferocious beasts in the mountains. Just one of them will be enough for our family of 5. Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly, but she could not help but complain in her heart. Damn it! Did he think that she did not know about this man's relationship with the wild beasts in the mountains? Obviously, she knew that the man had a black panther, and that panther was doing well in the mountains. As such, the man's movements in the mountains were unimpeded. Sure enough, the man's expression changed when he heard this. Then he said with a constipated look, "That's not very good. Animals are the best friends of humans. You're right, but we're hungry now. As the host, you should at least provide us with a meal. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. I'm afraid you won't be used to my simple life here. The man hesitated. It doesn't matter, we're not picky. Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. Hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, the man knew that he couldn't reject her. He could only brace himself and go back into the house to get his own food. He really didn't prepare food for the parents. This was because he didn't expect parents to find this place so early. According to his calculations, the earliest parents would find this place was in the afternoon. Now he had miscalculated. In a short while, the dining table in the living room was filled with several large bowls. After a quick glance, Lung Ruoxue looked at the man and said, "Is that all you're eating? You're really poor." The bowl was filled with vegetables, and there was not even a single piece of meat. The conditions in the mountains are simple. I can't do anything about it. The man said, somewhat embarrassed. Hubby, go and hunt a beast. Ignoring the man's words, Lung Ruoxue directly spoke to the demon. All right, he said. The demon nodded and turned to leave. His son was still growing, and he really couldn't just eat vegetables. Wait a minute. Seeing that his handsome father was really going out to hunt, the man quickly stopped him. He could not let the animals in the mountains suffer at the hands of this demon, or else his leopard son would blame him when he came back. My sons are still growing. The demon frowned when he saw that he was being stopped. There's still some meat at home, I'll go get it. For the sake of the animals in the mountain, the man could only offer up the leopard son's food. The meat was still raw when it was brought over. Ruoxue took a look and quickly brought it in front of his mother, saying proudly, Mom, have some barbecued meat. Yes, there are still many fresh vegetables in the yard. Son, go and pick some. Lung Ruoxue nodded and instructed. The three of them turned around and ran. When the man saw this, he hurriedly chased after her, shouting as he chased, Don't randomly pick. Some of the dishes are not mine and can't be touched. Then, a series of banging sounds came from the courtyard. When the three of them returned to the living room with fresh vegetables in their arms, their faces were full of joy and satisfaction. The man, on the other hand, looked dejected. These three little demons. Boo. They were his weekly ration. They had all been plucked by them. However, this was not what made him the saddest. What really made him sad and angry was that he, a man, could not defeat three little children. Sob. How could he live? I can't play with him anymore. The man was filled with grief, anger, and sorrow. The way he looked at Lung Ruoxue and the evildoer was filled with sparkling water droplets, and he looked as if he had been wronged. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue could only smile helplessly. I just took your order. Do you have to do this? It has nothing to do with the vegetables. I just want to know, who are you? The man suddenly said in a serious tone. We're the parents of our children. Didn't you already ask? Lung Ruoxue smiled. A straightforward person does not resort to insinuations. You know, I am not asking about this. The man said gloomily. From the behavior of the three children, this couple was definitely not ordinary people. How would I know which one you're asking? Besides, curiosity killed the cat. Sometimes, knowing too much is not a good thing. Lung Ruoxue warned. Yes, dear, you want to know too much. Ruoxiao suddenly interrupted. When Lung Ruoxue heard her son's baby-like voice, she couldn't help but laugh. The man's face darkened. This little kid was really unlikable. It was obvious that he was being laughed at by a little boy. Unfortunately, he wasn't very good with words, so he didn't know how to react. At this moment, a howl came from not far away, and the three's attention was immediately attracted. There's a kitten, the three of them said in unison. Then, the three of them ran out of the courtyard happily. Wait, isn't that a kitten? Before the man could finish his sentence, a few mournful howls were heard. Immediately, the man was shocked and chased after them. Outside the courtyard, a large black leopard with shiny fur was pounced on by three children. At first, when the man saw the situation, he was very worried for the three children. He was not worried that the leopard son would deliberately hurt the three children, but that the three children would be accidentally injured by his son's sharp claws. However, when he saw that his son was obviously at a disadvantage, he simply did not know what to say. That was a leopard. It was the ferocious Black Panther. But now, he was being pressed down on the ground by the three of them like a house cat. His poor son had become their plush toy. What was even more infuriating was that his son could not resist. What the hell is this? The man became even more indignant. He felt that today was not a good day for him and his son. They should not have come here. The man regretted. He regretted it so much that his intestines turned green. Originally, he didn't have much to do today, but he knew that his son hadn't been back here for a long time, so he wanted to take the opportunity of the kindergarten activity to bring his son back to see his old friends. Who knew that he would actually meet these little fiends? Why were they so unlucky? Chapter 3106, Small Farmyard 3. My son, little ancestors, please let my poor son go. Seeing that his son had been pressed down, the man couldn't help but plead for his son. This kitten is your son? Hearing the man's words, Saint Rue asked curiously. Yes, I raised it. Also, it's not a kitten. It's a Black Panther. The man corrected. It's a kitten. And it's much more obedient than my cat. We like it. Rue Sheng said with a smile. All the cats in his house were elders. Their mother had never allowed them to bully them, so they didn't dare to bully them. This cat was really to their liking. Look at this soft and smooth fur, it's like silk, it feels great. The three simply couldn't bear to part with it. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue and the demon walked out from the courtyard. The moment they saw their parents, the three of them immediately requested, Mom, let's take this kitten home and raise it. Hearing the three little demons' words, the beautiful black leopard's eyes rolled back and it fainted. Lung Ruoxue looked at the leopard's human-like actions and found it rather interesting. An animal that had yet to gain sentience could understand human speech, which was enough to prove its spirituality. Of course, it could also be that this leopard had lived with humans since it was young. But no matter what, this leopard was clearly different from the other beasts. Sons, this kitten is taken, we can't bring it home. Lung Ruoxue then said with a stern expression. Although she doted on her sons, she didn't wish for them to develop an overbearing personality. Furthermore, her sons didn't lack anything, so there was no need for them to snatch away someone else's favor. Sure enough, the three little faces all drooped after hearing this. Although you can't bring this kitten home to raise, you can invite them to our house as guests. Lung Ruoxue continued. Their mother's suggestion made their eyes light up, and they became lively again. As the big brother, Rue Xing even looked at the man shyly and said, Uncle, can you bring the kitten to my house as a guest? Don't worry, we won't bully it. I'll bring Bauer along after this event. Faced with the little boy's clear and expectant eyes, the man really could not refuse, so he could only force himself to say it. But then he thought about it. If he went to the mysterious couple's house, maybe he could find out some of their secrets. With this thought, he immediately looked forward to it. The black leopard, who had been pretending to faint, actually fainted after hearing what his human father said. Oh my God! The leopard didn't want to live. After taking care of the three, the man finally had a chance to save his son. However, when he touched the Black Panther's body, he realized that his son was in a bad state. Did he really faint? Oh my God! Wasn't her son too timid? With great difficulty, the man picked up his heavy son and walked toward the room with heavy steps. Lung Ruoxue and the evildoer brought the three of them and followed behind. After a few short steps, the innocent Rue Jean could not help but ask, Mom, isn't that kitten pretending to be unconscious? Why was the uncle still hugging it? Don't you think it's heavy? When Rue Jean said this, his voice was clear and melodious. The man who had already entered the room could not even pretend to be deaf and mute. After placing the black leopard on the bed, the man could not help but look at his silly son with sympathy, thinking, My son, have you met your nemesis? At the same time, Lung Ruoxue and the demon brought three of them into the room. Lung Ruoxue glanced at Black Panther, who was lying on the bed, and said to her son seriously, Sons, this kitten is really dizzy now, do you see? This is because she's too timid and got scared. The three listened to their mother's words and nodded solemnly. Their clear eyes were full of sympathy. In fact, they really didn't do anything to the timid cat. They just played with it for a while, so they really couldn't understand how the kitten fainted from fear. She's really not the usual kind of timid. Mother, it's too pitiful that it's so timid. Why don't we give it some spiritual intelligence? After thinking about it, Wuxia requested. He felt that if he gave the kitten intelligence, the cat might be smarter. You'll have to ask this uncle about this. Lung Ruoxia pointed at the man who was standing at the side. At this moment, as the man listened to the conversation between Lung Ruoxia and his sons, he became more and more confused. Now he was shocked to realize that he seemed to have discovered some shocking secret. So he did not feel good at all. What was he trying to do? Uncle, will that do? Seeing the man in a daze, Ruijin tugged at the corner of his clothes and asked. The man didn't know how to answer. Could the enlightenment that the other party was talking about be the one written in the ancient book? Would he? Looking at Lung Ruoxia, the man's eyes were filled with helplessness. At this moment, he urgently needed someone to answer his questions. Lung Ruoxia could not be bothered to waste her breath. She took out a pill and handed it to the man. If you want your son to gain sentience, then feed it. Will there be any side effects? The man was a little excited, but he still asked cautiously. Side effects? If it accidentally speaks in front of outsiders, it might be captured by some research institutes and cut into pieces. Lung Ruoxia thought for a moment and said, you can still speak? The man's face was filled with disbelief. Was this medicine really that magical? Wouldn't that be even more high-end than what the ancient books said? The ancient book only said that animals with spiritual intelligence could use their spiritual power to communicate with ancient martial arts powerhouses. If he could really speak now, it would save a lot of trouble. However, this matter was just as the woman in front of him had said. If outsiders knew about it, the consequences would be very serious. However, he had raised the little leopard himself and had always treated it as his son. Naturally, he hoped that his son would be able to achieve something in the future. In addition, the lifespan of ordinary animals was limited. He really did not want the little leopard to be unable to accompany him in his long life. Because this leopard was not only his family, but also his most trusted partner. Sure. Lung Ruoxia said with certainty. The man became even more excited when he heard this. After receiving Lung Ruoxia's confirmation, he no longer hesitated. He pried open the black leopard's mouth and stuffed the soybean-sized elixir inside. After a while, the black leopard woke up. Immediately after, it began to roll around on the bed in pain. Blood kept oozing out of its pores, mouth, and nose. The man was so frightened that he quickly stepped forward to help it, but he was stopped by Lung Ruoxia. Don't touch it, it has to get through this on its own. Lung Ruoxia reminded. Chapter 3107. Little Kitten 1. After hearing Lung Ruoxia's words, the man immediately lowered his hands obediently by his side like a baby, not daring to move at all. However, the pained howls of Bao's son on the bed reached his ears without any hindrance, causing his entire heart to be twisted together. His heart ached so much that his eyes were filled with tears, but he did not dare to move, so he could only watch his son, who was already covered in blood, roll around and howl in pain. His heart, felt as if it had been cut into pieces by a knife. About half an hour later, the black leopard finally stopped rolling around and howling. The man was relieved to see that. However, after waiting for a while, his leopard son was still lying on the bed, motionless. He couldn't even feel his breathing. This time, he was scared again. How could it be like this? How could it be like this? My son, are you going to leave your father like this? Sob, sob, sob. The man sobbed in despair. Hearing the man's moans, Lung Ruoxia was speechless. This guy was really. The demon simply turned to look at the ceiling. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would not be able to resist the attack. The other three opened their eyes wide in curiosity, looking at the man who was no longer young and crying. Uncle, don't cry, the little cat is fine. Ruijin, who had been staring at the man for a long time, couldn't take it anymore and reminded him. Well, he's not breathing, how can he be fine? Wait, you said it's fine? The man replied to himself, and only managed to react to what Ruijin was saying halfway through his sentence, and quickly asked. I'm fine. Ruijin nodded his head seriously. B, but it's not breathing. The man asked in disbelief. She's breathing, but it's too weak. Uncle, you can't feel it. Rui Jin said with a smile. The man was a little depressed. Although he was happy to know that Bao's son was fine, he didn't know why he couldn't be happy, because he found himself too useless. Even a little boy could sense that his son's breathing was weak. He was an ancient martial arts master, but he couldn't sense it at all. How could he bear this? More importantly, he didn't think that the little kid in front of him was lying to him. This made him even more conflicted. Sob, sob, sob. What was this little doll? She was really too impatient. As the man waited in self-pity and self-loathing, the black leopard, which had dried blood on its body, finally moved its fat claws. The man didn't even dare to blink when he saw it, afraid that he was hallucinating. After a while, the Black Panther slowly opened its eyes. Its slightly wet, deep blue eyes were still a little dazed. A few seconds later, its eyes clearly reflected the man's figure. Then it suddenly pounced on the man, hanging on him as it sobbed loudly. Daddy, sob, sob, sob. These 3 human cubs are bullying your precious baby. The prolonged voice and the similar crying made Lung Ruoxia's face turn black. She secretly regretted awakening this leopard's intelligence. Could this fellow not be so mushy? After a short while, Lung Ruoxia deliberately put on a straight face and said unhappily, "Human babies are not young. Please remember." "Then what should we call it?" "That's what we all call him." The Black Panther asked carefully. It could clearly sense that the woman in front of it was not in a good mood. "It's our child, our baby," Lung Ruoxia corrected him. She didn't care how these animals called human children in private, but her child must not be called a young cub. Oh, the leopard learned from this. A good leopard knows its mistakes and can change. Then it turned to the man and said, "Sob, sob, sob. Daddy, a human child is bullying your precious baby." Lung Ruoxia was speechless. The words darling gave her goosebumps, especially when these words came from a leopard. However, the man clearly didn't think his son was that mushy. He coaxed him with a pained expression. "Baby, it's okay, don't be afraid. They said that they won't bully you anymore." "Oh, really?" the Black Panther asked fearfully. "Of course it's true," the man promised. "Uncle, did we say we won't bully it?" At this moment, Rui Jin asked without giving him any face and with a confused look. "Of course. Didn't you invite us to your house as guests and promise that you won't bully my baby again?" The man's eyes widened. "I see." Rui Chen's pitch-black eyes turned. Actually, he really wanted to say that he was just being polite. As for whether or not he would be bullied, it really depends on the person's wisdom. However, he was smart enough not to say these words out loud. Otherwise, I'm afraid this father and son would not be willing to go to their house, hee. Rui Jin, who was laughing in his heart, did not say anything. The man saw this and said to his silly son, "Treasure, did you hear that? They won't bully you anymore. You really won't bully me anymore?" The black leopard couldn't believe it, and it timidly looked at the 3 with its watery eyes. "Don't worry, we'll only treat you well." The 3 of them patted their chests and promised. Hearing this, the Black Panther's heart that had been in its throat finally relaxed a little. Suddenly, it froze for a moment, then turned to the man and said, "Dad, did they understand what I said?" It obviously hadn't reacted yet. "Treasure, you're the one who can talk." The man touched the silly leopard's head and reminded him. "How is this possible? I'm a leopard. You've always been speaking leopard language. When did you learn human language?" The silly leopard's face was full of shock and disbelief. "I've given you intelligence. You can already speak the human language." Lung Ruoxia smiled. "Ah!" the Black Panther cried out in excitement. At this moment, it was simply impossible to describe its joy. When it was done barking, it then remembered to jump down from its father's back and pounce towards Lung Ruoxia. It then hugged Lung Ruoxia's leg tightly and said, "My benefactor, you're my second parent." Lung Ruoxia could not help but feel speechless. The word benefactor was so ancient. Who did this silly leopard learn it from? Benefactor. I have no way to repay your great kindness. I can only devote my life to you. Just as Lung Ruoxia was deep in thought, the leopard, whose reaction was obviously slower by half a beat, started to flatter Lung Wuxia nonstop. It did not even notice that at this moment, one of the evildoer's expression had already turned very dark. Originally, when he saw his wife being hugged by a leopard, his face had already darkened by half. Now when he heard this stupid leopard say that he wanted to devote himself to his wife, his entire face was blacker than ink. His clenched fist made cracking sounds. Just when he saw that a certain leopard was about to be in big trouble, the man said with a bitter face, "Baby, don't you want daddy anymore?" "Yes. But wanting a father doesn't affect me from repaying my kindness. Benefactor, please accept me. Let me work like a cow or a horse for my benefactor." The silly leopard pleaded with a sincere look. Chapter 3108, Little Kitten 2, Dante. Lung Wuxia shot a glance at the evildoer and rejected him directly. Why? The leopard was in extreme grief. In order to repay the favor, it had even cast its father aside. Sob, sob, sob. Troublesome, you're too noob. Lung Wuxia was very honest. The black leopard was greatly shocked. Troublesome vegetables? Didn't Daddy always say that it was very powerful? At the thought of this, the leopard looked at the man with a resentful gaze. His teary eyes were filled with accusation. "Daddy, you lied to your darling." The man didn't know how to respond. If he were to say, "Baby, you're really a noob in front of me," it would definitely hurt his baby's fragile little heart. Oh, he couldn't say it. After making up his mind, the man turned his head to the side. Seeing this, the silly leopard was even sadder. Was his father silently agreeing? Sensing the kitten's low mood, the three kind-hearted cats comforted it. "It's fine, we don't mind you. You can hang out with us three brothers in the future." After that, the three of them lifted the kitten, which weighed nearly 100 kilograms, and left the room. The leopard saw that it was going to be bullied again, and it was so scared that it burst into tears. The man wanted to save his son, but he cowered under Lung Wuxia's warning gaze. Leopard's son was carried away by the three of them, but his son's miserable shrieks could not be stopped. The man wanted to move, but he did not dare to. He could only stiffen his body and watch Lung Wuxia and the demon carefully. At this moment, Lung Wuxia and the demon had already found a chair to sit down on. However, neither of them said a word, and they only stared at the man indifferently. The man's heart was palpitating under their gazes. The pressure these two people gave him was too great. The man had no choice but to reveal his identity. "I'm from an ancient martial arts family." The man started from the beginning. After listening to the man's explanation, Lung Wuxia found out that the kindergarten she had chosen for her son had a close relationship with some ancient martial arts family. The person in front of her was from the Yang family. The reason why the kindergarten chose this place for parent and child activities was that this was the Yang family's territory, so there wouldn't be too much of a problem with safety. In addition, because of the high degree of confidentiality here, and the wilderness, it was just the right place to test the children's ability to take care of themselves, and to see if there were any promising talents. However, this member of the Yang family had been in closed-door cultivation all this while. After he came out, he had snatched this mission and brought his son here to guard. Hence, he had never heard of Lung Wuxia's three babies, nor was he clear that Lung Wuxia's family had been registered in the Yang family. In addition, he was a very reliable person, so the people in the clan had overlooked the fact that he did not know Lung Wuxia's family. Otherwise, how could he not recognize the three identical babies in front of him? Now, after he had explained everything, the evildoer did not even spare him a glance. On the other hand, Lung Wuxia only nodded her head slightly, and did not have any other reaction. This fact made the man feel inexplicably worried. However, he also knew that the strength of the two people in front of him was unfathomable, so he didn't expect the two of them to say anything. At the same time, the three of them had taken care of the little kittens in their eyes. The three babies and the beast were happily playing together. When Lung Wuxia, the demon, and the man arrived at the courtyard, they saw the four little fellows getting along harmoniously. The man instantly felt relieved. After lunch, the four of them continued to play together. Lung Wuxia and the demon found a shady place to spend some time with each other. All of a sudden, an angry beast's roar reverberated through the sky. When the black leopard heard this sound, It immediately said, "Something has happened." She ran out of the courtyard. Seeing this, the three of them quickly chased after it. Just as the man was about to leave, he was blocked by Lung Ruoxue and the demon. "You can stay at home," Lung Ruoxue said calmly. "But the beasts in this mountain." The man was about to say that the beasts in the mountain were not to be trifled with. Who knew that before he could finish his sentence, Lung Ruoxue and the demon had already teleported and disappeared. The man who was standing there in a daze rubbed his eyes. He looked in disbelief at the direction where Lung Ruoxue and the demon disappeared. Was he seeing things? Where did he go? This was definitely not Qinggong. The man didn't dare to think further. After Lung Ruoxue and the demon teleported away, they quickly arrived at the scene of the incident. However, in order not to scare the ordinary people, the two of them stopped when they were a few meters away from the scene and walked to the scene. On the way, the two of them had already figured out the situation. It was not that they wanted to be nosy, but they did not want their son to appear too different in front of these ordinary humans. The cause of the incident was very simple. It was just that a little child had taken a fancy to a little tiger cub and had a conflict with the little tiger's parents. However, the little boy's parents were a little powerful and had many bodyguards with them. As such, humans and animals were at odds. On the surface, the humans seemed to have the upper hand, but in fact the tiger couple was already calling for help. This time, the mountain was going to be lively. Initially, Lung Ruoxue and the demon had intended to watch the show. However, the two of them did not intentionally hide themselves. Hence, the moment they arrived, they were immediately discovered by the parents who were present. One of the parents wanted to call the two of them over to his side, but Lung Ruoxue and the demon didn't move. The person who called out to them immediately said anxiously, "Mr. Yi, Mrs. Yi, come here quickly. It's too dangerous there. We're about to be surrounded by ferocious beasts. It's the same anywhere." Lung Ruoxue said indifferently, "Madam Yi, what do you mean by this?" The parent asked in disbelief. "Didn't you notice? These two tigers have already called for help. Otherwise, why do you think they can stay so calm and not move?" That's right, the golden tiger couple with black stripes were extremely calm at this moment. They were even looking at the human in front of them with disdain with their clear, yellow eyes. But towards Lung Ruoxue and the demon, the tiger couple was extremely alert. Needless to say, their beast instincts had already told them that the man and woman in front of them were not people they could afford to offend. So, as long as Lung Ruoxue and the demon didn't help these humans who wanted to snatch their children away, they wouldn't take the initiative to start a conflict with them. However, as long as they wanted to snatch their children away, they wouldn't let them off even if they had to risk their lives. After sensing the two tigers' emotions and saying those words, Lung Ruoxue walked over to the two tigers' side. She slowly stretched out her hand, wanting to touch one of the furry heads. Her actions frightened many of the parents so much that they didn't even dare to breathe. No one had expected Madame Yi to be so bold. Many of the parents present had seen a ferocious beast that could only be seen in the zoo. It had appeared in front of them with its bloody mouth wide open. Their legs had long gone soft from fear. But now, this young and beautiful woman in front of them was actually going to touch the tiger. Wasn't this just seeking death? Well, a tiger's butt can't be touched. Someone shouted in a hurry. You can't touch a tiger's butt. When Lung Ruoxue heard this, black lines appeared on her forehead. She turned around and asked, "Is your tiger's butt on its head?" Everyone was silent. He was still in the mood to joke at this time. It could be seen that he was really not afraid. After that, Lung Ruoxue turned to look at the two tigers in front of her. Her pair of slender jade-like hands finally landed on one of the tiger's furry head. The aura on Lung Ruoxue's body made the tiger, who had been taken advantage of, feel very comfortable. Thus, it did not struggle, and instead allowed Lung Ruoxue to caress it with a look of enjoyment. Fortunately, it was a female tiger, or the evildoer would have gone mad again. However, at this moment, the evildoer's face was also black. It was obvious that he was not willing to let his wife touch someone else, even if it was a female. Actually, Lung Ruoxue didn't touch this tigress to take advantage of her. She was communicating with the mother tiger. However, in order to hide it from others, She could only use this method. As the tigress' furious gaze turned gentler, Lung Ruoxua retracted her hand and turned to the person in question. Return the tiger cub to them. At this time, the palm-sized golden tiger cub was in the arms of a little girl about 3 or 4 years old. Perhaps the little girl's grip was a little too strong, but the little tiger let out an extremely weak and painful howl in her arms. When the mother tiger heard it, she angrily growled a few times in a row as a warning. However, be it the little girl or her parents, it was obvious that they did not take Lung Ruoxua's words or the tiger's threat to heart. The child's mother was even more furious as she said, "Mind your own business. My daughter has taken a fancy to this little tiger, so we're raising it. I'll see who dares to snatch it from me." After hearing the child's mother's overbearing words, Lung Ruoxua was speechless. Did she think that she liked to meddle in other people's business? If it wasn't for the fact that she wanted to cover for her sons, and was also afraid that other innocent children would be accidentally injured, she wouldn't have said anything at all. Moreover, as a mother, she was very clear on the importance of a child to a mother, whether it was a human or a beast. It was the same. You're the one who snatched someone else's child, so even if you're looking for death, don't drag others down with you. Lung Ruoxua reminded him. What did you just say? Whose child did I snatch? Who have I implicated? How dare you slander me? Do you know who my father is? My father is. The child's mother immediately exploded when she heard Lung Ruoxua's words. However, Lung Ruoxua's words resonated with the other parents. They were innocent in this matter, but now they were trapped here and didn't dare to leave. Of course, the main reason was that they didn't have a chance to leave because the tiger couple treated them as a group. As long as they showed any intention of leaving, the 2 tigers seemed to rush up and bite them at any time, so they could only stay where they were. Due to the fact that the parents who had snatched the tiger cubs were quite powerful, they didn't dare to say anything to stop them. Now that Lung Ruoxua had spoken, the trapped parents seemed to have seen their savior. However, they weren't sure if Lung Ruoxua would be able to resist the other party's power. At the thought of this, many parents showed worried expressions. Lung Ruoxua couldn't help but laugh when she heard the child's mother's words. Was she going to fight for her father? Even though snatching of baby beasts could happen in any realm, and it was not as if she had never seen it before, this kind of thing usually happened in worlds where both humans and beasts could cultivate. As for the world of ordinary humans, it was deep in the mountains. Lung Ruoxua really could not understand. Where did an ordinary human get the courage to provoke a ferocious beast so publicly? Or did they think that the beast had a good temper, so they thought it was Kitty? Chapter 3109. The Black Python. 1. In reality, Lung Ruoxua really wanted to give this couple a thumbs up for their brave actions. However, the prerequisite was that they must not implicate others. It was not very professional of him to seek death and harm others at the same time. At the thought of this, Lung Ruoxua was too lazy to argue with the other party. She only said in an unusually cold voice, "I'll say it for the last time. Return the tiger cubs to them." When she said this, Lung Ruoxua even intentionally added a hint of pressure. However, even though the little girl's parents' hearts trembled, it was obvious that they did not take her seriously. They still did not take her words seriously. Regarding this, Lung Ruoxua did not fuss over it and walked in front of the little girl, saying softly, "Little girl, give the little tiger in your hand to Auntie. I want it. It's mine." After the little girl heard Lung Ruoxua's words, she stubbornly refused. "It's not yours. It belongs to her parents." Lung Ruoxua patiently communicated with the little girl. "Mine. It's mine." The little girl shouted. As Lung Ruoxua spoke to the little girl in a gentle tone, the little girl did not feel afraid at all. In fact, she even felt that this auntie who wanted to snatch her pet was a bad person. Following that, she burst into tears. The moment the little girl started crying, the child's mother could not take it anymore. She immediately threw the pressure that Lung Ruoxua gave her to the back of her mind, and even stood in front of the little girl in an aggressive manner. She shouted angrily, "You're an adult. Don't you feel bad bullying my 4-year-old daughter?" Lung Ruoxua laughed and asked, "I bullied her? If you think I'm bullying her just because I asked her to return the little tiger to her parents, Then I have nothing to say. Just take it that I bullied her. Now, quickly return the cub to this tiger couple, or else, bear the consequences. You finally admit that you bullied my daughter. You're an adult. How can you bully a child? The child's mother seemed to have caught hold of something that Lung Ruoxue could use against her. She raised her voice on purpose and changed the topic. You're threatening me? Do you need me to remind you of my identity? You should know that there's no one alive who dares to threaten me. After hearing the child's mother's words, Lung Ruoxue was even more disinclined to waste her breath on her. Seeing that Lung Ruoxue actually dared to ignore her, the child's mother was so angry that she turned around and shouted at the parent standing beside her. You've all seen it. This woman dared to bully my daughter and even threaten me. I'm going to sue her, and you have to be my witness. When the parents heard this, they couldn't help but scoff in their hearts. However, due to the other party's influence, they didn't dare to refute and could only secretly give Lung Ruoxue an apologetic look. Whether it was Lung Ruoxue or the little girl's parents, they were obviously on the stronger side. If they could, these parents didn't want to offend anyone. However, if they were forced to choose, they would definitely choose the little girl's parents. After all, they didn't know Lung Ruoxue's identity, but they knew the power of the little girl's parents. Seeing them like this, Lung Ruoxue didn't feel annoyed at all. Originally, she had only meddled in other people's business because of these children. Now that the parents didn't even dare to fight with the evil forces, she naturally didn't need to get angry with a few passers-by. It wasn't worth it. After a while, she silently returned to the evildoer's side. Instantly, the little girl's mother was pleased and even gave Lung Ruoxue a threatening look. However, Lung Ruoxue couldn't be bothered to even look at her. Her baby was nearby, so she'd better wait for her baby. At the same time, when the female tiger saw that the humans did not listen to Lung Ruoxue's words, it roared angrily. In an instant, a strong dark wind suddenly blew towards them. Before the parents could react, the dark wind had already surrounded them. It was only then that the parents could see clearly that this was not wind. It was clearly a huge black python that was nearly 100 meters long, and had a waist that was thicker than a bucket. The berserk python's disaster. Seeing the large python, the parents lost their minds and were immediately thrown into chaos. Their shrieks were deafening, and they wished they could just faint. The children were also so scared that they kept crying. The parents wanted to run away with their children, but they discovered in despair that their legs were soft, and they had no strength at all. When the python saw that its entrance had frightened many people, it felt rather pleased with itself. However, its cold eyes did not dare to look in the direction of Lung Ruoxue and the demon. The leopard brothers had already warned it that among these humans, it could offend anyone but that terrifying couple. After thinking about it, the python deliberately extended its huge head in front of the little girl's parents. It even opened its mouth and stretched out its tongue to make a hissing sound. Then it pretended to bite the little girl's mother. The little girl's mother was so scared that her eyes rolled back and she fainted. Seeing that one of them had fainted from fright, the python was very pleased. However, when it unintentionally met Lung Ruoxue's clear eyes, the python's cold vertical eyes revealed a trace of innocence. It didn't do it on purpose, no way. But it would not admit that it was playing a prank. Hee. The python secretly thought that it would be great if this woman also took a fancy to it. At that time, she could also give it some spiritual intelligence. The python could not help but daydream. This snake is quite funny. Lung Ruoxue watched the python's every move, and sent a message to the evildoer. However, the evildoer didn't think the same way. Instead, he gave the python a warning look, which was obviously telling him to stop having any ideas about his wife. After the python was warned, it hurriedly retracted its gaze, unwilling to part with it. Then, with a light curl of its long tail, the little girl who was carrying the tiger cub was curled up high into the air. The little girl immediately cried even louder in fear. When the little girl's trembling father saw this, he said in a trembling voice, Let go of my daughter." The python understood and gave him a mocking look. It was a pity that it couldn't speak. Otherwise, it would definitely tell this human that since he had snatched away our beastie's child, we would return the favor and snatch your child away. This was called an eye for an eye. It wasn't that he didn't want to take revenge, but it wasn't time yet. Then the python handed the little girl, who was wrapped in its tail, to the tiger couple. The tigress took over the little girl, raised her paw, and gently swiped it across the girl's arm. The little tiger was released from the little girl's imprisonment, while the little girl fainted from the pain and shock. The little girl's father saw that his daughter had also fainted, and there were 5 claw marks on her arm. He suddenly lost all fear and quickly shouted at the bodyguard beside him. "You guys are dead. Why are you still standing there? Hurry up and save my daughter." The bodyguards listened to their employer's words, but they still did not move. It was not that they did not want to move, but their bodies were all frozen in fear. What was even more abominable was that the huge python was actually using its tail to tease them. The little girl's father saw that his bodyguards were so useless, and was so angry that he almost vomited blood. At this time a huge snake face suddenly appeared in front of him, and looked at him affectionately. There was a fishy smell coming from the snake's mouth. The girl's father could not stand the strong smell and instantly fainted. Chapter 31:10. The Black Python 2. The python had taken action and directly finished off the family of 3. It had frightened the other parents so much that they didn't dare to breathe. Their small bodies were also shaking and they almost couldn't stand steadily. Obviously, the python's power was above that of the tiger couple. The python was quite proud of such an outcome. It wagged its head and crawled in front of the tiger couple. The snake and the tiger conversed for a while. Then the python gave Lung Ruoxua a reluctant look before it slowly crawled into the depths of the forest and disappeared. The veins on the demon's forehead could not help but throb as he watched the python reluctantly turn its head every 3 steps and look at his wife like a wronged wife. Although he had already experienced his wife's charm among the beasts, those beasts had all developed spiritual intelligence. Why were these ordinary beasts like this now? Hey, the demon was a little mad, and the sea of jealousy in his heart made him want to beat someone up. Lung Ruoxua could tell that her husband's face had turned black, and was a little upset. She quickly hugged his arm coquettishly and said, "Hubby, let's leave too." The demon nodded and looked at the tiger couple with a hidden meaning in his eyes. The 2 big tigers were so frightened that they didn't even dare to say goodbye to Lung Ruoxua. They brought their child and disappeared into the forest. The demon was very satisfied with this. Otherwise, if this tiger family of 3 had to bid farewell to him reluctantly, he would be even more driven mad. Seeing that the beast had left and there were no casualties, the demon pulled his wife and left without looking back. The parents, who were so scared that their faces turned pale, quickly followed. Some of the parents couldn't help but say in a trembling voice, "Wait, wait for us. Don't leave us behind." After seeing that there were many large beasts here, they really didn't dare to travel alone. In fact, they had only seen a few ferocious beasts. Including the tiger cub, there were only 4 of them. Most of the other beasts did not even show up. What were the other beasts doing? The answer was very simple. He was busy pleasing the 3. When Lung Ruoxua and the demon found their sons, what they saw was the 3 of them being surrounded by many ferocious beasts. Those beasts had taken out many of their collections, and were trying to please the 3 of them. Lung Ruoxua didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she saw this. No wonder his 3 sons did not come to the scene. It turned out that they had been entangled by these beasts. However, when the ferocious beasts saw the outstanding human couple who had suddenly appeared in front of them, they all took a big step back in unison, and remained vigilant. When the 3 saw this, they quickly comforted him. "Calm down. They are our parents." Upon hearing that these were the 3 little ancestors' parents, the eyes of the ferocious beasts lit up, and they all looked at Lung Ruoxua and the demon shyly. Lung Ruoxua and the evil black line. What are these guys trying to do? Benefactor, they are my friends. What do you think of them? Do you want to take them in as your errand boys? The Black Panther spoke in a fawning manner. As the saying goes, we should share good fortune and misfortune together. Now that it had obtained great benefits, it naturally could not forget these good brothers who had been with it all this time. Why do you want to keep them? I'm not running a zoo. Lung Ruoxua was speechless. I'll just keep it, and when I'm free, I can play with my little benefactor. The Black Panther suggested. All the beasts nodded in agreement. Although they were very ordinary, they were still very useful. There was no problem with guarding the house. Facing the expectant gazes of the beasts, Lung Ruoxue felt a slight headache. "Mom, let them be our little brothers." Seeing that his mother still didn't agree, Ruoxing opened his mouth to plead. "It's not that you can't let them be your little brothers, but they have so many mouths. How are you three going to raise them? You have to know that your little brother's father and mother won't care." Lung Ruoxue said with a stern face on purpose. Of course, she said this because she hoped to cultivate a sense of responsibility in her sons. If they were willing to take on the responsibility of these beasts, it wouldn't be a big deal for her to raise more beasts. The three of them heard their mother's words and gathered together to discuss in whispers. The beasts did not stay idle and communicated in their beast language. After a while, Ruoxing spoke on behalf of his two younger brothers. "Mom will take care of them. We'll work hard to earn food for them." These words were easy to understand, and all the beastmen were moved to tears. At this time, the black leopard also spoke on behalf of all the beastmen. "Little benefactor, don't worry. The beasties have discussed it, and will strive to solve the problem of rations by ourselves." The Black Panther was extremely proud when it said this. It was a good thing that its brother was willing to earn his own keep. This time the benefactor wouldn't refuse, right? As expected, Lung Ruoxue was a little surprised when she heard the Black Panther's words. After all, this was not the divine realm. It was extremely difficult for the beasts who had been living in the deep mountains to leave this place and earn their own keep. They might even be captured and taken to the zoo. But since these beasts had this intention and her sons were willing to take them in, she naturally would not stop them. Lung Ruoxue then said to her sons in a serious tone, "Children, since you've decided to take them as your underlings, you can't abandon them no matter what happens. Remember, they're not pets but your partners." The three of them nodded, then turned to the black leopard and said, "Tell them that we will take them into the spirit beast space and take them away. Tell them not to be afraid." The black leopard understood in an instant and roared a few times as a translator. And the other beastmen nodded in agreement. A few seconds later, the three spirit beasts had moved the spirit beasts into the spirit beast space. At this moment, a black shadow rushed over and rolled around on the ground, acting cute. The demon's face darkened when he saw this guy. Damn it! Why was this python here? Just as he was thinking about this, he saw three golden figures, two big and one small. When the tiger couple saw the evil demon's unfriendly eyes, they cowered a little, but they still bravely stayed where they were. On the other hand, the tiger cub did not know what fear was. Instead, it kept moving closer to the three. It was obvious that the tiger cubs liked the three of them very much. The three of them were also very fond of the fluffy and baby-like tiger cubs, so much so that they even held the tiger cubs in their arms and refused to let go. Lung Ruoxue was helpless. She knew that the tiger cub was very cute, and most children would find it hard to resist its charm. Otherwise, the previous incident wouldn't have happened. However, her three sons were not ordinary children at all. Why did they? Thinking about the beasts at home who could mimic others, his sons had never been so close to them. Forget it. Since his son liked it, he could raise one beast or a group of beasts. He had already brought so many away, so it didn't matter if he brought a few more. Seeing that their mother had acquiesced, the three of them happily put the few beasts that arrived later into the spirit beast space. After returning to the small farm, the man had been pacing back and forth at the entrance uneasily. When he saw Lung Ruoxue and the demon, he quickly went up to them and asked, "How is it? Did anything happen?" The man only felt at ease after he explained the matter simply, and said that it had been resolved. When the man saw the dispirited parents, he didn't know what to say. However, when he did a head count, he realized that a family was missing. Why are there 3 people missing? Did any of you see them? The man could not help but ask. Everyone looked at each other, but no one said a word. In reality, the family of 3 that was missing from the list, as well as their bodyguards, were currently lying in the forest. When the parents brought their children away in a hurry to chase after Lung Ruoxue and the demon, no one thought of bringing them away. Now that the man had asked, they were naturally too embarrassed to answer. Didn't you see? The man was in a difficult position. It was getting late. If they didn't start the planting activity, they wouldn't be able to finish it today. He couldn't let these parents stay in the mountains for a night, right? It was foreseeable that the parents were definitely not mentally prepared to spend the night in the mountains. In addition, they were all frightened, so it was even more impossible for them to agree to spend the night in the mountains. The parents remained silent. The man looked at Lung Ruoxua helplessly, hoping that she would answer his question. Mr. Yang, you only have two choices at the moment. One is to cancel this planting activity, and the other is to start now, Lung Ruoxua said calmly. Ugh. After hearing Lung Ruoxia's words, the man understood. That family of 3 most likely wouldn't be able to make it. However, he had thought that they had withdrawn from the event. He would never have thought that the family of 3 who couldn't make it were the culprits of the previous incident. It was impossible to cancel the event, so he could only make do with it and start. At the man's command, the parents went to his place to get their seeds and find a place to plant them. Looking at the parents' negative attitude, the man's mouth couldn't help but twitch. This was the most boring planting activity in history. Out of all the parents, only Lung Ruoxia's family was in high spirits and in high spirits. Of course, it was mainly because the 3 of them were very excited and had a great time. In fact, their happiness had nothing to do with the farming activities. They were happy because they had recruited a lot of new followers. In the end, the most boring planting activity in history came to an end. Needless to say, Lung Ruoxia's family had obtained the highest score in the activity with an absolute advantage, and not a single parent had any objections. After the planting activity, the parents asked the man to send them home. The man was speechless, but he understood that the parents and children had suffered a great shock, so he happily fulfilled their requests. Lung Ruoxua and the demon brought their children and left with the parents. As he watched Lung Ruoxia's family leave, the black leopard, who was afraid of scaring people, hid away and cried like a baby. Knowing that his son was being raised by someone else, the man felt rather upset, but he still patiently coaxed. Baby, don't cry. I'll take you to them tomorrow. Thank you, Dad. Hearing his father's promise, the little leopard immediately stopped crying. The man couldn't help but sigh. A father can't control his son. After he was done with his melancholy, the man packed up and left the small farmyard with his silly son, who was in the CO camp but not in the heart. Chapter 31:11. My Master is a God 1. Not long after the man and the leopard left, the group of people who had been left in the mountains also woke up. When they first woke up, their eyes were dazed and their vision was blurry. However, they quickly reacted and saw shrieks that were louder than the previous one. The group of people were like chicks who had just come out of their shells, huddled together tightly. Their frightened little appearance was really pitiful no matter how one looked at it. After a long time, this large group of people sensed that the danger seemed to be far away, and they slowly calmed down. The little girl's father began to yell arrogantly and loudly. Useless things, a single snake can scare you to this extent. The girl's father was very angry, and the consequences were very serious. The bodyguards felt wronged. They didn't want to do this either. The snake was simply too big. Besides, who wasn't scared at the scene? Of course, the bodyguards didn't dare to say this out loud. Otherwise, they would probably have to pack up and leave immediately. The bodyguards who were being scolded had no choice but to lower their heads. The girl's father scolded more and more vigorously. When he was tired of scolding, he said ruthlessly, "Damn stinky snake. I won't let it go." And the 2 tigers. The girl's mother added with a pale face, "Yes, we won't let go of any of the animals in this mountain." The girl's father nodded. In order to establish his authority again, he had decided to start with the animals in the mountains. That woman with the surname Yi also deserves to die, the girl's mother said. When the girl's father heard this, he looked a little embarrassed. Although the woman was obviously on the side of the tigers, to be honest, they didn't do anything to them. They just chose to stand by and watch. If they were to be retaliated against even with this, then wouldn't the other parents present also deserve to die? When it came to animals, the girl's father had no pressure to take revenge. However, when it came to taking revenge on other parents, he had to be careful. After all, the parents of the children who could enter this kindergarten must have some power. If they were not careful and provoked someone they should not provoke, the entire family would be in trouble. After thinking for a while, the girl's father said, "Let's leave that woman's matter to the family to decide." He didn't dare to make this decision. "Humph. I knew you couldn't bear to. Is it because she's pretty?" When the girl's mother heard this, she immediately said in dissatisfaction, "What are you talking about? Aren't you afraid of being laughed at?" The girl's father was a little annoyed. Why didn't this woman take a look at where she was when she was jealous? She even did it in front of so many bodyguards. Was she trying to make him lose all his dignity? The girl's mother snorted coldly when she heard this. Then, she glared at the bodyguards present with her eyes that were spitting fire. The bodyguards were all very observant, and had already lowered their heads and pretended to be invisible. The girl's father saw that his wife had finally become obedient, so he quickly called home for help. Not long after, the family sent someone to pick them up. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue and the demon had already returned home with the other three. After returning home, the three of them couldn't wait to let the animals out. The animals were not used to a new place at first, but after a few minutes, they collectively reacted. They were in a new home. The new home is so beautiful. Flowers and grass were everywhere. Feeling the soft grass beneath them and the fragrance of the soil, the animals suddenly felt very happy. Some petite and cute animals were so excited that they directly rolled on the grass. The large beasts could not help but howl at the top of their lungs. When Lung Ruoxue saw this scene, she could not help but sigh. It was a good thing that the place they were staying at was sparsely populated. Otherwise, the noise from these animals would have woken up the neighbors. There was even the possibility of a complaint from the neighbors. It was really too noisy. Who knew that just as this thought emerged in her mind, a violent roar sounded in her ear. "Who is it? Can't you let me sleep in the middle of the night? It's so noisy." As soon as the voice fell, a white lightning suddenly appeared. After it circled around the animals that were howling excitedly, the roars stopped. The white bolt of lightning also appeared and landed in Lung Ruoxue's arms. Lung Ruoxue looked sympathetically at the beastie that had already fainted. She gently stroked Song's fur and said, "Song, why did you sleep so early? It was only 6 in the evening, so it should be dinner time. I'm bored so I can only sleep." Azure said. "Pfft." Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but laugh out loud. Then she played along and asked, "Why are you bored? You have so many underlings to play with you every day." The underlings that Lung Ruoxue was referring to were her beasts. "Them? I've had enough of those guys," Azure said with slight disdain. Hearing this, Lung Ruoxue didn't know if she should comfort Song, or be glad that her beasts had finally escaped from the sea of suffering. "Girl, did you specially get these ordinary beasties for me to play with?" "Uncle Song, they are our little brothers." Hearing Song's question, Saint Rue weakly replied, "Little brother? What's the use of these ordinary beasts as underlings? If you really want little brothers, I'll go back to the divine realm tomorrow and find a few good ones for you. These beasts will be given to Uncle Song to play with. How about it?" Azure discussed. "Uncle Song, mother said that a gentleman doesn't take what others like." Ruizi carefully reminded. He was really afraid that Uncle Song would flip out. "Nio." Hearing Ruiz's words, Song raised his head and looked at Lung Ruoxue. Lung Ruoxue touched Song's head and said gently, "Song, don't even think about these ordinary beasts. Their small bodies are too weak and you'll break them. Girl, you also don't love Song anymore." After hearing this, Song said in disappointment. The light in his eyes also dimmed. Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but feel speechless. It seemed like Song was really too bored. He was actually acting pitiful in front of her again. However, before Lung Ruoxue could reply, the demon angrily picked Song up from Lung Ruoxue's arms and shouted, "My wife doesn't love you. I'm the only one she loves." "Are you sure?" Song lightly opened his eyes and said, "Of course." The demon gritted his teeth. If he could, he really hoped that Song could disappear from his and his wife's eyes forever, but that was impossible. He was afraid that he would never be able to get rid of Song in this life. "I hate him so much." Evildoer glared at Cold, and Cold glared back at Evildoer without showing weakness. Lung Ruoxue and the other three sighed in unison. Alright. The two cockfighting chickens were fighting again. However, Jian Song had obviously regained his fighting spirit. So Lung Ruoxue pretended that she had not seen anything. After keeping the unconscious animals, Lung Ruoxue brought the three of them back to her room. The moment Lung Ruoxue and the three of them left, the demon grabbed Song and headed to the chaos world. Chapter 31:12. My master is a god too, you bastard. One-on-one. When the demon returned to his room, a few hours had already passed. Lung Ruoxue looked at her dear husband, whose clothes were a little messy and his originally handsome face had a few claw marks. She could not help but laugh out loud. Seeing his wife fall on the bed laughing exaggeratedly, the demon was very depressed. Honey, are you that happy to see me injured? The demon said, feeling wronged. The battle is quite intense. Lung Ruoxue laughed as she spoke. Of course, we've brought out our true abilities. This was definitely not a joke. Don't think that I'm in a sorry state right now. You'll know if you go and see that fellow, Azure. He's even worse off than me. The evildoer became arrogant as he spoke. You guys. Lung Ruoxue was helpless. It had been so many years, but these two fellows would still fight from time to time. Fortunately, they knew their limits and didn't challenge her bottom line. Otherwise, the one who would be in trouble would definitely be this man and beast. It's healthier to fight. Didn't you see Song's dead look? It's full of energy now. The demon said proudly. When Lung Ruoxue heard this, she couldn't help but think to herself, Song must be so angry that his hair is standing on end. How can he not be spirited? Lung Ruoxue was smart enough not to say these words out loud. She patted the demon's head and said, It's late, go to sleep. Honey, what should I do about my injury? The demon was not satisfied. Didn't his wife see that his face was disfigured? One had to know that he had come back with injuries to seek comfort and comfort. How could he be dismissed with a simple go to sleep? He wouldn't do it. It's okay, I'll be fine in a few days. Lung Ruoxue deliberately said in a nonchalant manner. Wife, take a good look, your husband is disfigured. That Azure fellow's claws were really vicious. I know it has been jealous of my handsome face for a long time, but it doesn't. The demon said with hatred. Hubby, we've been married for so long. Even if you're disfigured, I won't despise you. Don't worry. Lung Ruoxue promised with a smile, but she didn't say anything to comfort him. Honey, you've become bad. Knowing that his little scheme would not succeed, the demon said in disappointment. Well, men don't like bad women. Lung Ruoxue nodded her head in all seriousness. The evildoer surrendered. His wife had really learned the bad things. Some of the sorrowful evildoers entered dreamland with endless melancholy in their hearts. The next day, Lung Ruoxue and the rest were having breakfast when the man brought the silly leopard to visit. As soon as the two of them entered the courtyard, they looked left and right like Granny Lu entering the Grandview Garden. Everywhere they looked was good, and they were quite excited. Ji Kai, who was leading the way for the man and the leopard, looked at their silly appearance and didn't know what to say. Where did these two guys come from? Why was he so similar to him back then? Ji Kai, who felt that they were in the same boat, also felt very kind to the reaction of the man and the leopard, so he didn't rush them. When the two had seen enough, he took them into the living room. Lung Ruoxue knew that they had arrived and was preparing to welcome them with the demon, her grandfather, and her brother. The moment Black Panther saw Lung Ruoxue, he immediately pounced on her and hugged her leg tightly. He sobbed with tears in his eyes. Benefactor, I'm here. The man blushed. The demon's face darkened. Why was this damn leopard clinging to his wife again? He swear this junior leopard is quite interesting. Lung Ruhan could not help but laugh when she saw the leopard's actions. It's a leopard that's out of line. Lung Ruoxue was speechless. She then freed her leg from the leopard's claws. When the Black Panther saw this, more tears welled up in his eyes. He sobbed like a pitiful little creature that had been abandoned. Oh, my benefactor doesn't like me anymore. My benefactor has a change of heart. Lung Ruoxue looked at the ceiling, speechless. What the hell is this? The demon's face turned even darker, while Lung Qingtian, Lung Ruhan, and the rest watched with interest as the Black Panther cried in front of them. At this moment, a white light suddenly appeared. Then, everyone heard the Black Panther let out an ah. He let out an extremely miserable scream, and covered his face with his claws, blood flowing out from the gaps between his claws. After White Light finished his sneak attack, he even cursed. "You little country bumpkin, you dare to have ideas about Nyo? When did Nyo ever like you love you?" Needless to say, it was definitely Tsong. Evil Demon wanted to give Tsong 32 likes, but Tsong's next words made him take back his likes without hesitation. Because Tsong said, "If Nyo likes someone, she should like me, and if she wants to love, she should love me." Lung Qingtian Lung Ruhan, and the rest were already used to Yu Tsunglia being jealous of others, but this man had never seen this before. Originally, he was quite angry that his son was scratched by a cat, but when he heard the cat speak human language, he couldn't be angry anymore. He really didn't dare to provoke Beastie that had gained spiritual intelligence. The leopard that was scratched by Blue was so scared by Blue's pressure that it didn't even dare to breathe. It could only act pitiful with tears in its eyes. "Ooh, this cat is so scary." As a beastie, its intuition was naturally invincible, so the leopard knew very well that it was no match for this cat. This fact really made the leopard's heart feel stifled. More importantly, its face hurt. The blood had soaked the silk-like black fur on its face. It was disfigured. As if she could read the leopard's mind, Lung Ruoxua took out an ordinary healing elixir and stuffed it into the leopard's mouth. The moment that sweet and fragrant feeling entered its stomach, it immediately felt that its face no longer hurt, and its body was in great shape. In an instant, the leopard was revived with full health. But this time, it didn't dare to get close to Lung Ruoxua, mainly because the cat by its benefactor's side was too scary. Carefully and vigilantly looking at Song, Junior Leopard didn't dare to speak. Song Ziyi sneered, then hooked his finger and said, "Since you've gained intelligence, you'll recognize me as your boss in the future, understand?" Junior Leopard nodded his head frantically and roared in his heart, "I know." He knew it too well. He didn't dare to not know. In this way, Junior Leopard was threatened by Tsong and changed sides at the last moment. One should know that he came for his benefactor. Now he had become a cat's errand boy. As the saying goes, the fist is bigger than the sky. Seeing his son being threatened by a cat and becoming a cat's hatchet man, the man's heart was filled with emotions. However, he was more curious about the pill that Lung Ruoxua had just given to his silly son. He didn't know what ingredients it contained, but it was too magical. His son's injuries had healed in the blink of an eye. Of course, the man didn't dare to ask. He was afraid that this was someone else's secret, and he didn't want to be killed. It had to be said that the man was overthinking. Due to his relationship with Bao Er's son, the man had also successfully settled down in Lung Ruoxia's villa temporarily. However, when he did, he realized that the little white kitten was not the only beast that could speak in the villa. A white tiger the size of a palm, a fiery red parrot, a beautiful silver wolf. Although every beast here was not big, they could all speak the human language. They even often looked at him with disdain, as if they were looking at an ant. This feeling was so beautiful that no one dared to look directly at him. After living here for a few days, the man gradually got used to being despised by the beasts here. Of course, this was mainly because Ji Kai would come to talk to him and comfort him when he had nothing to do. However, it was undeniable that the food here was really good. He was reluctant to leave after staying for a few days. Although his silly son would be bullied by Lung Ruoxia's beasts from time to time, his son's strength would increase by several times under their training. This could be considered a blessing in disguise. On a certain day, when his son was once again taught a lesson by Lung Ruoxia's family's beasts, the man started to chat with Ji Kai while applying medicine for his son. As they were chatting, the man suddenly asked, "By the way, what about the other animals that the 3 babies brought back? How come I didn't see it? They are also being repaired." Ji Kai coughed and said with a look of sympathy, "I see." The man's heart instantly felt balanced. Who exactly is your master?" he asked after some hesitation. How could his strength be so profound? Ji Kai looked around and then asked with a serious face, "You really want to know?" "I do. Can I tell you?" The man asked carefully, his face full of curiosity. He wasn't trying to find out the other party's secret, was he? After all, the other party could have chosen not to say anything. I can, but am afraid you won't believe me, Jikai said innocently. He knew that his master allowed this guy to live here, because he wasn't afraid of him knowing his identity. Of course, if the other party didn't ask, he wouldn't tell him. But since the other party asked, he naturally couldn't lie. He was an honest and good child. Let's hear it, the man said happily. My master is a god. Jikai paused and said, God. The man was shocked. There was a god in this world? Obviously, he did not believe it. You don't believe me? Jikai saw through the man's thoughts and asked with an evil smile. I can't believe it. I'm an atheist. The man said honestly. It's fine if you don't believe me. I've already told you, right? Jikai didn't think much of it. Then he turned around and left. Son, do you believe me? Looking at Jikai's back, the man asked his wounded son. Daddy, I believe you. The black leopard's eyes were filled with tears. It was beaten up by the beasts here all day long. And those overbearing beasts didn't allow it to eat healing pills. How could it not believe it? Even if it didn't want to believe it, it had already been beaten up by the other party. Ai, son, hang in there. The man sighed. As the saying goes, no one knows a son better than his father. How could he, as the father, not know what his son was thinking? Junior Leopard nodded with tears in his eyes. Such a painful and happy day was too ecstatic. Compared to the little leopard's ecstatic life, the three of them were living quite comfortably. They were overjoyed to have so many new members in the house. Since her son was happy, Lung Ruoxia would naturally be happy as well. Unfortunately, these happy days only lasted for a few days before someone came to challenge them. The people who had come to challenge them were the couple who had been abandoned in the mountains. When the man found out that the couple had come to find trouble, he was so speechless that he didn't know what to say. They didn't know what kind of people and beasts lived here, right? Otherwise, how would they dare to? Who gave them the guts? The man had heard about the couple's incident, but he didn't think much of it. After all, he didn't think that anyone would dare to offend Lung Ruoxia and her husband. However, it was obvious that he had miscalculated. They had come prepared. This time, the couple had brought quite a few people with them. Chapter 31:13. The Army of Animals, 1. Thinking of the other party's lineup, the man fell silent. Although the other party had a lot of people and weapons of mass destruction, no matter how he looked at them, they were like meat buns to a dog that would never return. Just as the man couldn't help but think to himself, suddenly, a cold snort that was clearly displeased interrupted his thoughts. The man immediately looked up and searched, then subconsciously lowered his head again. He saw a child about the same age as the three children, looking at him with a noble and cold face. On the child's head, there was a snow-white kitten. The man's heart skipped a beat when he saw the cat named Song. Then he heard a certain baby ask in dissatisfaction. You said meat buns hit dogs? May I ask who's the meat bun and who's the dog? Ah. Hearing this, the man turned pale with fright. He didn't say that. He only thought about it in his heart. How did this child know? The man's expression was so shocked that Qingju did not even need to read his mind to know what he was thinking. Qingju then said, You didn't say it, but you've thought about it in your heart. This time, the man was completely speechless. He could only stare blankly with his eyes wide open. Small fry. You still dare to let your imagination run wild in our house? Azure said with interest. Sob, sob, sob. The man came back to his senses and his face was covered in tears. He should have known. This family was not ordinary. Unfortunately, no one had warned him, so he couldn't let his thoughts run wild. The man immediately snapped out of his daze, and didn't dare to think about anything else. His mind was completely blank as he sat on the sofa in the living room. Seeing him like this, Lung Ruhan, who was watching the show from a distance, could not help but laugh. All right, Qingju Tsang, stop bullying him. Umph. The two of them snorted in tacit understanding, and then found a place to sit down. The man's eyes were shining as he looked at Lung Ruhan, who had helped him out of the situation. He was screaming in his heart, what a good person. At this moment he truly felt that apart from Jikai, Brother Lung Ruoxue was the kindest person in this villa. Brother-in-law, this little guy is praising you in his heart. Suddenly Azure spoke. Lung Ruhan's mouth twitched when she heard this. Could this fellow Tsang not call him brother-in-law on purpose? That jealous bucket could get jealous. In the past, because of Tsang's brother-in-law, the man and beast had fought. Since then, Tsang would say this from time to challenge the authority of a certain demon. In this regard, they were quite helpless. Similarly, when the man heard Tsang's words, he broke out in a cold sweat and suddenly woke up. Why was he thinking about it again? However, why did that cat call Lung Ruoxue a brother and brother-in-law? The man couldn't understand, but then he saw a cold wind quickly blowing in front of him, and then an afterimage grabbed Tsang. They are. The man was speechless as he watched the man and the cat disappear in front of him. What kind of superpower was this? It's fine. Let them settle their personal grudges themselves. Lung Ruhan said nonchalantly. He was already used to it. It was probably because Tsang could not make a move today, so he wanted to find someone to fight with. A certain demon was undoubtedly the most suitable candidate. Hearing that it was a personal grudge, and that it had to be picked at this time, the man was a little speechless. He asked unwillingly, "What about the people outside? We seem to have been surrounded." Unfortunately, their two main forces had run away. "Calm down," Lung Ruhan said nonchalantly. Then, she picked up the teacup on the coffee table and took a sip of the hot tea. Seeing how calm and composed the other party was, the man felt that there was no need for him to worry. In fact, he wasn't too worried about his own strength, but the other party had many weapons in his hands. He was really afraid that the people in the villa couldn't withstand it. After all, they were all mortal. The man's thoughts started to run wild again. Then Green Vessel snorted coldly. "Humph! I told you not to let your thoughts run wild. Why can't you remember? Besides, who told you that we're all mortal? We're not ordinary humans. I was wrong." The man hurriedly apologized. A good child who knows his mistakes and can change for the better. Give him a chance. However, he still asked out of curiosity. "What do you mean by not a normal human being?" He didn't think that these people were any different from him. "We are gods," Qingju said indifferently. "All right." The man sighed, indicating that he understood. God. He was more like a lunatic. "You're the crazy one, your whole family is crazy." As expected, Qingju started scolding. The man's heart shrank in fear. Sob, sob, sob. He made a mistake again. But he couldn't control his heart. Lung Ruhan glanced at the man with a long face and asked sympathetically, "You're calling us lunatics?" I didn't mean it that way." The man's face was covered in tears. He really wasn't. That was just a natural reflex. It doesn't matter even if you tell me. Ordinary people would indeed think that way. Lung Ruhan said considerately. The man was very grateful when he heard that. What a kind Prince Charming. However, Lung Ruhan changed the topic and asked, "Since you think we're crazy, how dare you live with us? Aren't you afraid that we'll suddenly go crazy and kill you?" "Oh, I really didn't mean it that way." The man was about to cry again. He was wrong, his idol was not kind. "It doesn't matter. Since we're all patients, can you, the only sober person, please send away the people outside?" Lung Ruhan blinked and said. Her male god was so bad, so bad, so bad. She was sending him to his death. So he was the real meat bun. The man with a bad memory secretly cursed again. However, Lung Ruhan did not let him think for too long. She grabbed him by the collar and threw him out of the courtyard through the floor-to-ceiling window in the living room. By the time the man reacted, he was already floating in the air. Ah! The man, who was afraid of heights, inadvertently glanced down and immediately felt his blood flow backward. His little face turned pale with fear. Then with a plop, he began to fall from midair. His screams were getting louder and louder, but after he landed, he didn't feel any pain. His lower body was still soft. When he looked up, he saw countless pairs of eyes staring at him. A faint sound came from below him. Get up, you're pressing on me." Ah! Only then did the man react. Someone had become his cushion. Hee hee, what good luck. Looking at the crowd, the man stood up from the ground calmly, and even patted the dust off his clothes. Then he asked as if nothing had happened. "What are you guys doing with a weapon each? Breaking into private property? A house? We're here to seek revenge from Lung Ruoxue and her husband." A woman replied in a shrill voice. After her family's investigation, they found out that the couple were unemployed and had no power at all. They did not belong to any power. That was why she and her husband dared to come to their door so brazenly today. And since they couldn't find the animals in the mountain, they could only vent their anger on Lung Ruoxue and her husband. Chapter 31:14. The Army of Animals, too. This was what the woman thought. Of course, she would not forget the humiliation that Lung Ruoxue had brought to her on that mountain. Otherwise, she would not have spent such an expensive price to persuade her husband's family. Today, she would make sure that Lung Ruoxue and her husband would not be able to step out of this villa. What revenge? What did the couple do to you? The man asked in confusion. They didn't help us and even helped the animals in the mountains to bully us. Humph. You don't care about human morality at all. The woman complained. The man was even more speechless after hearing this. He reminded, if they really don't care about human morality, do you think you can still stand here today? He was probably eaten by the wild beasts in the mountains. Besides, you were the ones who snatched the tiger's cub. It's only natural that the tiger couple would want to settle the score with you, right? I dare to say that if it wasn't for Lung Ruoxue and her husband's presence at the time, both of you would have been buried in the tiger's mouth. Nonsense. That pair of tigers wouldn't dare to do anything to us. We have bodyguards. The woman refused to admit this fact. In any case, she was certain that Lung Ruoxue was on the side of those damned animals. Unfortunately, after she and her husband were rescued, they brought people back to the mountains, but they couldn't find a single strand of animal hair. How could she not be furious? You only have a few bodyguards? It's not that I'm looking down on them, but a single snake is enough to scare them unconscious. The man said, "You." The woman was so angry that she was speechless. Then she came to her senses. Since this man had fallen out of the villa and seemed to know Lung Ruoxue, he was naturally her enemy. Why did she have to waste her breath on him? At the thought of this, the woman immediately turned to her subordinates and said angrily, "What are you guys doing? Hurry up and capture this hostage." Hostage? The man was stunned. Was he thrown out by his idol just to be a hostage? At this moment, the man was inexplicably worried. He didn't want to be a burden. "I hope you don't regret what you've done," the man said with an expression of someone who had seen through the world. "Humph. If you want to be a hostage, then you should have the awareness of being a hostage. Why are you talking so much nonsense?" The woman felt that the man was talking too much and rebuked him angrily. "All right. I'll shut up." The man was very tactful in the face of several guns pointed at him. Then he was tied up with a thick rope. Seeing that the man had been intimidated, the woman couldn't help but laugh wildly. At this moment, the person who was treated as a meat cushion also woke up. He looked at the man carefully and asked carefully, "You look familiar. Have we met before? It must be familiar." The man thought to himself, but he said, "You look familiar too, but I don't think we've met before." Hearing the other party say that he had never seen it before, the meat cushion was instantly relieved. Then the meat cushion instructed the woman, "Since we have a hostage, then order the people inside to come out. Otherwise, it'll kill the hostage." "Oh my, you still want to kill the hostage?" He was a hostage, not a hostage. The man expressed that he was sorrowful again. A hostage sounded better than a hostage, although the two meanings were similar. Just as the man was about to clarify, the woman had already obediently picked up the microphone and shouted into the villa. "The people inside, listen up. Your people are in our hands. Come out and surrender, or you will bear the consequences." The man was very embarrassed. He truly felt that he was too obedient. Why was he treated as a hostage without any resistance? Ugh. There was only one answer: the other party had a gun, and he didn't want to be shot into a pile of coal. After thinking it through, the man felt that he should be a quiet and obedient beautiful man hostage. As the woman shouted at the top of her lungs, there was no movement in the villa. A certain meaty pad saw this and couldn't help but say, "Is there no one in this villa? Why is it so quiet? Hey, I'm asking you a question." Seeing that no one answered, a certain meaty paw directly shouted at the man. The man felt a little wronged and thought, "Are you asking me?" He was clearly talking to himself, okay? Someone's there. He might be sleeping. The man thought for a moment and decided to fulfill the other party's spirit of not being afraid of death. After all, he knew that Lung Ruoxue and the others would definitely not leave him in the lurch. You can still sleep after such a huge commotion? A certain meaty cushion was furious. He then turned his head and ordered the person behind him, "Fire! Shoot! You have to kick the people inside out. I'd advise you not to." The man sighed and stopped her. "What, are you scared?" A certain meaty cushion said rather proudly. "It's not that I'm afraid, but you'll regret it." The man replied. He truly felt that he was too kind. He was almost touched by himself. When has our Ding clan ever regretted? A certain meaty pad said proudly. "All right. Go ahead. I wish you success." The man didn't want to say anything more. These people would definitely not turn back until they hit a wall. "Get ready. Fire." Thinking that the man had given in, a certain meat cushion ordered again. In an instant, hundreds of pitch-black muzzles were pointed at Lung Ruoxue's villa. Just as the subordinates of the meat cushion were ready to fire, the villa's door suddenly opened. A baby and a black leopard walked out. The baby's face was tied up tightly, and his face was filled with the worry of being disturbed. Then the people holding guns heard a childish voice angrily say, "Who dares to blow up my house? You're really tired of living." When they heard that the one who threatened them was a little baby, everyone couldn't help but burst into laughter. Only the man who was held hostage had a serious expression on his face. Why did this little devil come out? Seeing Qingju, the man couldn't help but sigh. Milk babies these days were not to be trifled with. Of course, he was even more touched when he saw Bao's son standing beside the baby. His son was still the best. Knowing that she was worried about him, she came out to take a look. Sob, sob, sob. She really didn't dote on this son for nothing. The man was inexplicably touched, but the good son in his heart was actually just here to watch the fun. At the same time, more and more animal armies slowly strolled out of the villa. The crowd had never seen such a huge formation before. At first, they were a little panicked, but they soon realized that they had guns in their hands and so many people. Why would they be afraid of a few animals? With this thought, everyone immediately calmed down. When the woman saw 3 familiar faces, she was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. How did the animals in the mountains disappear? It turned out that Lung Ruoxue had brought them into her own house. No wonder they couldn't find a single strand of animal hair in the mountains, even after searching for several days. How detestable. It was really too detestable. The woman was filled with hatred and looked at her husband smugly. The smug expression on her face seemed to be saying, "Look, I have foresight." It was right to settle the score with Lung Ruoxue and her husband. In contrast to the woman's pride, the tiger couple looked at her, as if she was their nemesis who had killed their son. At that time, if they had not given Lung Ruoxue a face, they would have torn this hateful human woman into pieces. He had thought that the woman would be so scared that she wouldn't dare to appear again. He didn't expect that she would actually come to find trouble with Little Master's parents today. This was truly a case of not taking the path to heaven, but coming to hell when there was no door. The tigress thought to herself, "This time, you asked for it." Little Master said that whoever dares to bully their parents will not be let off. With Little Master's approval and no objections from Little Master's parents, the tiger couple felt that they could finally show off their skills. For a moment, not only was the tiger couple happy, but almost all the animals were also unusually excited. These days, they had always been at a disadvantage of being bullied. Today they finally had the chance to bully others. Roar! Roar! Oh! The animals roared at the sky in excitement. Humans didn't understand animal language, so most of the people present took the continuous roars as a warning and provocation from the animals. Instantly, the human holding the gun was enraged. For a moment, the atmosphere was tense. In the next moment, the animals rushed toward the woman and the others in a nest. The tigress had specially gone to greet a woman. If he didn't teach this woman a good lesson, he would be letting her down for taking the initiative to come to his door. The tigress' big claws slammed at the woman a few times, directly turning her body into a bloody mess. The claw marks were quite obvious. Finally, the tigress' big claws finally swung at the woman's face, accompanied by the woman's ear-piercing scream. The woman fell straight to the ground and fainted. After dealing with the woman, the tigress set her eyes on the woman's husband. The child's father, who was already scared silly by the tigress' ferocity, didn't even use the tigress' claws before his eyes rolled back and he fainted. "You useless thing." The tigress smacked the child's father's leg a few times. Gotcha. With the sound of bones breaking, a young man not far away heard the tigress speak in the human language. His face suddenly turned pale with fright, and he trembled as he pointed at the tigress and screamed. He spoke, "Ah, a ghost. You're the ghost. Your whole family is a ghost." The tigress cursed in her heart and grinned. "Little guy, you heard wrong. You must be hallucinating. I didn't say anything. And no words." Then who was the one talking to him and looking at him with such affection? The young man's mind went blank when he thought of this. Then he was knocked unconscious by the tigress' paw. The tigress quickly finished off her target, and the other animals also finished off their opponents. The animals were agile and their claws were quick. Before many people could react, the guns in their hands were snatched away. Then there was no then. In just over 10 minutes, all the enemies had been defeated. The man looked at the unlucky fellows who had fainted all over the ground, and his heart could not help but be shocked. How long has it been? The animals were actually trained so well. After the unlucky ones were taken down, the three of them happily strode out of the villa. Glancing at the battle situation, the three nodded their little heads in satisfaction and said, "Well done, Animal Army." The animals were very excited to be praised by their little master, and they immediately raised their voices and roared at the sky. Suddenly, Saint Rui's eyes turned slightly and looked at the man who was still tied up like a dumpling. However, some people's performance wasn't that great. They were actually treated as hostages by a few ants. "They've really embarrassed us three brothers." Chapter 31:15. Can I just approve it? 1. When Rui Sheng said this, his beautiful little face was full of contempt, and the someone he was talking about was only aggrieved. He really could not be blamed for this. He had been thrown out, and the other party had a gun in his hand. If he didn't know what was good for him, he might not be able to see these three little cuties. The man who felt that he was very smart smiled at Rui Sheng and said, "Little Rui Sheng, can you help Uncle untie the rope?" "Not good, because you're too weak. We three brothers discussed with Mom and Dad and decided to let you train with us." Saint Rui laughed evilly. The man's hair stood on end when he heard the word special training. Could it be what he was thinking? As long as he thought of his leopard son's miserable state, his little heart would tremble nonstop. No, he didn't want special training. At this moment, Qingju, who knew what was on his mind, snorted coldly and said, "You brat, you've gotten off easy. Not everyone has such an opportunity, so don't take it for granted. Moreover, we didn't charge you any training fees, so why are you being so pretentious? You really don't look like a man." He was a real man, and he's not some stinky brat. Listening to Qingju's tone and the words he said, the man was so depressed that he was about to go crazy. Who would be called a little brat by a little boy, and then criticized for not being like a man? "You little brat, do you know how long I've lived?" Seeing that the man was unwilling to give up, Qingju continued to ask, "How many years? From your appearance, you can't be more than 2 years old." The man said with certainty. Qingju pouted and said disappointedly, "I knew you'd judge a book by its cover. Let me tell you, other than these three, the youngest in this villa is almost 100 years old." "Arg. It can't be?" The man was really shocked. However, he felt that the credibility of a little boy's words was not high. Knowing that the man did not take his words to heart, Qingju was no longer angry. He only said, "Get ready for the special training." Then she turned around and returned to the villa. As soon as Green Vessel left, the three of them left as well. The little master left, and the army of animals followed behind in a grandiose manner. Every beast carried an unconscious person in their mouths and claws. In the blink of an eye, the black leopard was the only one left beside the man. Seeing this, the man was moved to tears and sobbed. "Son, you love your father the most. Dad, you're so pitiful. If I don't stay here to accompany you, what will you do?" The Black Panther said emotionally. In fact, it also wanted to follow its good friends back to the yard. "Good son, your father didn't raise you for nothing," the man praised. The Black Panther shyly said, "Dad, you have to work hard. In the future, you have to train with us. Other than the pain, my strength still improves quite quickly." When the man heard this, his touched emotions disappeared without a trace. "My son, you've been brainwashed so quickly?" When he entered the living room, the man realized that the owner of the hand was a certain demonic man. Instantly, his little heart trembled again. For some reason, every time he saw this evildoer, he would feel a little scared. Especially when a certain evildoer didn't make a sound. He was so scared that he didn't even dare to breathe. When he said this, his eyes, which were as dark and bright as the stars and moon, stared at the man for a long time. Then he shook his head and said, "Weak. You're really too weak." The man wanted to cry. He was an expert in his family. But it was undeniable that he was nothing in front of these people. The man had no way to resist, and was forced to undergo special training by the demon the next day. As for the candidates for the man's special training, they were, of course, the idle beasts. This time, the man also enjoyed the same treatment as Bao's son. Every time after the special training, the man and Bao's son would apply medicine on each other's wounds, then hug each other and cry. But it was undeniable that it was just as Bao's son had said. The man's strength had increased very quickly. Half a month later, the man who was in pain and happiness at the same time really couldn't take it anymore. The main reason was that the intensity of the special training was too high, and he needed to take a break. While no one was looking, the man found 3 and said to them, "Little guys, do you want to travel around the sea?" He had mentioned the trip to Lung Ruoxue and her husband before he came here, but they had rejected him. Now, in order to let himself catch his breath, he was like 3 little ones. The 3 of them raised their heads to look at him, then Rue Zi and Rue Xian lowered their heads again. And the wisdom saint spoke on behalf of them. "I don't." The man's heart couldn't help but turn red after being rejected so directly. Why? The man was unwilling to give up. He only wanted to go out and take a breather. Couldn't he fulfill such a small wish? "Shwa shwa shwa. Because I've been there," Saint Rue said calmly, but he could not help but sneer in his heart. He wanted to persuade them to leave the house with such a small reason? How childish. Ugh. The man did not expect this answer. He was a little surprised, but he did not give up. He coaxed, "Why don't we go to Uncle's house to play? There's an event at Uncle's house. You can go and watch the fun." There was. This event is the Ancient Martial Arts Family Elite Competition that happens once every 10 years in the ancient martial arts world. There will be a lot of fights. How about you go to Uncle's house to watch? The man saw that Saint Rue seemed to be interested and quickly tried to persuade him. "Okay, but you have to get Mom and Dad's permission first." Saint Rue nodded. "Oh, go and talk to them," the man immediately said. After that, when he looked for Lung Ruoxue and the demon, he invited them to the Yang family to participate in the grand event of the ancient martial arts families. However, Lung Ruoxue only looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. The man who was being stared at by Lung Ruoxue's clear eyes had goosebumps all over his body. He asked carefully, "What's the matter? Is there a problem? Why did you lie to my son?" Lung Ruoxue said indifferently, "Arg. When did I lie to them?" The man was confused. He would never dare to lie to those 3 little ancestors. "Didn't you tell the 3 of them that there was a fight going on in your house?" Lung Ruoxue replied honestly, "Arg. I did." The man admitted. He knew that nothing that happened in this house could be hidden from the couple. He had just finished talking to the 3 children, and the mother already knew. Chapter 31:16. Can't I just approve it? 2. But we're not from the ancient martial arts families. Or do the ancient warrior families allow outsiders to participate in the elite competition? Lung Ruoxua asked indifferently. Of course outsiders are not allowed to participate, but our Yang family can announce to the public that you are a branch of the Yang family. This way, the 3 children of Saint Rue can participate in the competition. Of course, they'll still need your permission to decide my identity. The man explained his plan. When Lung Ruoxua heard this, she couldn't help but laugh. You're quite good at scheming. You made my son work for your Yang family. Can your Yang family bear the consequences? I'm innocent. I really didn't think that way. I just thought that this was the only way to let the 3 kids participate in the competition, because Rue Xing told me that he wanted a fight. The man said with an aggrieved expression. Since my son wants to fight, then well do as you say. But please remember, the Yang family better behave themselves. Otherwise, the Yang family's end will only be worse than the Ding family's. Lung Ruoxua warned. The moment he heard Lung Ruoxua mention the Ding clan, the man couldn't help but shiver. One had to know that he had personally seen that evildoer wave his hand, and a black hole appeared in midair. Then, those unconscious people disappeared without a trace. According to what the man had said, those people had been thrown into hell. After that, the entire Ding clan had mysteriously disappeared from the Nether Blue planet. The matter of the Ding clan had basically become a major unsolved case on the Nether Blue planet, and no one had been able to find even the slightest trace of it. However, the man admitted that he knew about it, but even if he didn't dare to say anything. He could only keep what he saw to himself. The other party's methods were too terrifying. So many people disappeared with a wave of his hand. What kind of ability was this? Although the man was shocked, he couldn't really treat the other party as a god since he considered himself an atheist. However, he could still worship him like an empty god. Thinking of this, the man nodded his head like a chicken pecking at rice. 3 days later, Lung Ruoxua and the rest were ready to set off. Looking at the beasts of different sizes standing in the yard, the man's mouth twitched. If he brought these animals home, the family wouldn't think that he was going to open a zoo, right? Oh my god. It was too spectacular. What, is there a problem? They can't go? Lung Ruoxua asked when she saw the man in a daze. I can go. However, they can't casually open their mouths when they arrive at the Yang family. The man said with a headache. How are they going to transport all these animals home? Don't worry, they're smarter than you. Lung Ruoxua promised. After the man heard this, he was depressed again. Was he saying that he was worse than an animal? Yes, don't worry. We won't say a word in your house. We will only talk in our own house. That tigress, who had been very excited ever since Lung Ruoxua awakened her spiritual intelligence, saw that the man was depressed and used her claws to cover her mouth as she laughed evilly and added salt to the wound. The man was speechless. The days when he was bullied by the animals all day long were really ecstatic. After sulking for a while, the man reminded her again. I'm afraid we can't transport so many animals to the Yang family at once, so we can only do it in batches. Before he could finish his words, he felt a flash in front of his eyes and his head became dizzy. When he returned to normal, he suddenly found that he had arrived at the foot of the mountain where the Yang family patriarch's house was. Oh my god! Why are we here? This was too fast. The man was unable to accept this. This is called teleportation. Lung Ruoxua explained with a faint smile. Teleportation? What a high-end skill. He really wanted to learn. You can't learn it. Your strength is too weak. Lung Ruoxua replied honestly. I've been despised again. The man's heart was deeply moved. Unfortunately, he didn't have to be sad for long before someone from the Yang family received the news that an animal army had arrived outside. Immediately, some of the Yang family members ran out of the main house to find out what was going on. Upon seeing the man, an old man with a goatee immediately roared. Little Mountain, why did you bring these animals back? There's no place to keep them at home. The old man's brows were all furrowed together. Seeing that the Yang family's weirdo, who loved martial arts and animals but did not like women, had brought back so many animals, the old man's heart ached. How much money did it cost to raise so many mouths? You're called Little San? Lung Ruoxue raised her brows and asked curiously when she heard how the old man with the goatee had addressed her. It's the mountain of a tall mountain. Imyangshan. The man explained. At the same time, his heart ached. He had known the Lung family for so long, but no one had asked him for his name. Sob, sob, sob. It wasn't hard to see that they had really treated him as a passerby. I see. Then with so many people and so many beasts, won't your third uncle go crazy? Lung Ruoxue said considerately. Yes, that's for sure. So, I will find a way to ask the family to give you the same treatment as the Yang family. Yang Shan said responsibly. What kind of treatment does the Yang family receive? Lung Ruoxue was a little curious. Since there was a stingy finance staff, she really couldn't believe that the Yang family's treatment would be any better. After all, from her point of view, the clothes on that goateed man were too old and worn. His long robe had also been washed white. He really knew how to live. Yang Shan was a little conflicted, and then he said ruthlessly, although we don't have much pocket money, our daily meals are still pretty good. The standard 4 dishes and 1 soup are very nutritious. 4 dishes and 1 soup? Yang Shan's words made Lung Ruoxue feel conflicted. The people in her family were extremely picky about food, and she did not dare to ask what the so-called 4 dishes and soup were. Let's open fire ourselves, Lung Ruoxue said after some thought. This isn't very good, is it? Yang Shan was even more conflicted. He had invited a guest into his house, and he had to open fire himself. If this got out, the Yang family would lose face. However, when he thought of all the beasts, he was at his wit's end. At this time, the goateed old man, who saw that he was being ignored, roared again. Little Mountain, are you deaf? I'm talking to you. Who is this girl? She's quite pretty. After the old man with the goatee finished shouting, he stared at Lung Ruoxue. Third uncle, she's a distant relative of our Yang family. Her name is Yang Shui. Yang Shan quickly explained. They had discussed the name Yang Shui before. Yang Shui? How come I've never seen him before? The goateed man was a little puzzled. He couldn't help but mutter in his heart. When did the Yang family have such a great beauty? Why didn't I receive any news about her? Third uncle, it's Yang Shui's first time at the main house. Of course you haven't seen her. Yang Shan reminded. That's true. Yang Shui. Welcome to the Yang family. The goateed man said enthusiastically. Thank you, he said. Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly. Her bright eyes were kind and radiant. Suddenly, the young men who followed the goatee were all dazed as if they had been struck by lightning. Even the elderly goatee felt that his mind was in a daze. The demon was not satisfied and snorted coldly. Instantly, the dazed crowd regained their senses. The goateed man coughed awkwardly and asked, This is? The man's aura was too strong, and the goateed man couldn't ignore it even if he wanted to. More importantly, this man looked a little too demonic, right? If such a man were to be brought to the Yang family, wouldn't the young maidservants of the Yang family go crazy? Oh my God! Thinking of the terrifying scene that might appear, the goateed man became angry again. Could this person also be a distant relative of the Yang family? Since when did the Yang family have so many monstrous talents? He's Yang Shui's husband, Yechen. Yang Shan shrunk his neck and introduced carefully. He knew that the scary evildoer was jealous again. Sob, sob, sob. So scary. It was so scary. Oh, the goateed old man nodded and immediately reacted. He said in shock, What? Husband? Yang Shui was married? Does the main family know about this? Cake buying, how could he have forgotten about this? When Yang Shan heard this, his little heart immediately trembled again, especially when he received the demon's obviously unhappy gaze. He was so scared that he almost cried. Sob, sob, sob. He really did not do it on purpose. Please don't mess around. Then he explained to the demon in a low voice. The marriage of the Yang family's daughters requires the approval of the main family. This is the family rule. However, you should calm down first. I will explain this to the patriarch later. Please believe me. Looking at the pleading in Yang Shan's eyes, the demon gave him a look that told him to take care of himself and ignored him. However, Saint Rouet was rather curious and asked, Why do I need the Yang family's approval for my mother's marriage? Can't I just approve it? Hearing baby Rui Sheng's unusually serious words, Lung Ruoxia's heart bloomed with joy. Her son was too cute. When the goateed old man saw that it was a beautiful child who spoke, he couldn't help but take a few more glances. Then he held back his laughter and cooperated. If she's a daughter of the Yang family, she'll naturally need the Yang family's approval. It's impossible for you to approve of it, because when your mother got married, you weren't even married yet. And who's your mother? This was what the old man with the goatee wanted to know the most. Mother. Saint Rui looked at Lung Ruoxia and called out. The goateed old man followed Saint Rui's gaze, and his mouth twitched a few times. It was fine if Yang Shui didn't return to the Yang family, but why did she come back with a husband and a son that had grown up? This was too fantasizing. However, if those old fogies of the Yang family knew about this, Yang Shui would have a hard time. The old man gave Lung Ruoxia a sympathetic look. Lung Ruoxia was baffled. On the other hand, Qingju, who was at the side, had been covering his mouth and laughing secretly. He realized that this old man from the Yang family was quite interesting. The activity in his heart was extremely rich. It seemed that he wouldn't be lonely in the Yang family. Qingju expressed his satisfaction with the life in the Yang family that was about to come. Chapter 31:17. Mom said we'll take care of our own food. Qingju was satisfied, but Lung Ruoxia's heart felt stifled. Ever since she had become the divine master, no one had ever pitied her. Now he was actually sympathized by an ordinary old man. This feeling was too overwhelming. Sensing Lung Ruoxia's displeasure, Yang Shan quickly tried to smooth things over. Third uncle, Yang Shui's situation is a bit special. I'll explain it to you later. By the way, these two little kids are also Yang Shui's sons. They are triplets. In order to distract his third uncle who liked children, Yang Shan pulled out Rui Zi and Rui Qiao who were hidden among the beasts. As expected, the goateed old man's gaze was immediately attracted. The goateed old man was overjoyed when he saw the three beautiful little fellows who looked exactly the same. He stretched out his arms and picked them up. Cute. She was really too cute. Beautiful. It was simply too beautiful. As expected of our Yang family's descendant. The old man with the goatee muttered to himself proudly. Upon hearing this, Lung Qingtian and Lung Ruhan were not happy. That was obviously a child of the Lung and Yi families. He had nothing to do with the Yang family. At the thought that their child had suddenly become someone else's, the great-grandfather and uncle glared at Yang Shan fiercely. Yang Shan shivered and immediately begged for mercy with tears in his eyes. Sob, sob, sob. It was temporary. It was really temporary. He really couldn't afford to offend his great-grandfather and uncle. Of course, the parents of the child were the ones he could not afford to offend. Yang Shan was clear that he had to explain Lung Ruoxia's matter clearly as soon as possible. Otherwise, anyone here could easily cut him into 8 pieces. Just thinking about it made him panic. Third uncle, don't just be happy. Let's talk when we get back to the main residence. Yang Shan saw that his third uncle was interested in the three of them, and was afraid of angering their parents, so he tried to stop him. Yes, let's go home first. The old man with the goatee finally reacted. After taking a few steps with the 3 animals in his arms, the goateed old man immediately turned around and pointed at a large number of animals. You little brat, I was almost fooled by you. Tell me, what did you bring these animals home for? You want to open a zoo? I'm telling you, our Yang family can't afford to keep so many animals. Third uncle, can you not be so stingy? Yang Shan said helplessly. Stingy? What's wrong with me being stingy? If I'm not stingy, can I afford to feed you parasites? You only know how to waste the Yang family's money, and have never contributed a single bit to the Yang family. The more the goateed old man spoke, the angrier he became. In the end, all the Yang family members present were scolded by him. And those Yang family members who were scolded, even if they were scolded, they didn't dare to refute at all. Each and every one of them lowered their small heads like little quails that had just come out of their shells and didn't make a sound. Contribution? The contribution of this expert is much greater than our Yang family's losses. And it was little Schwer. Do you know how many resources our Yang family has used to cultivate such a master? But to this day, he hasn't earned a single cent for the Yang family, and he even has to reach out and ask for pocket money from the Yang family. Oh right, our Yang family also has to help him raise that even more useless leopard son. That damn leopard, it doesn't like meat. It has to eat more than 10 jin a day. It's hurting my heart. Sob, sob, sob. Do you know how much money they spend every day? Countless. Seeing that Yang Shan did not say anything, Lung Ruoxue could not help but ask curiously. Isn't little Shanzi an expert of the Yang family? This isn't considered a contribution? Contribution? The contribution of this expert is much greater than our Yang family's losses. And it was little Schwer. Do you know how many resources our Yang family has used to cultivate such a master? But to this day, he hasn't earned a single cent for the Yang family, and he even has to reach out and ask for pocket money from the Yang family. Oh right, our Yang family also has to help him raise that even more useless leopard son. That damn leopard, it doesn't like meat. It has to eat more than 10 jin a day. It's hurting my heart. Sob, sob, sob. Do you know how much money they spend every day? Countless. The goateed man lamented, and even exaggeratedly wiped his tears. Yang Shan and the black leopard's small faces were slightly red, and they were too ashamed to show their faces at his accusation. When Lung Ruoxue heard the goateed old man's words, she couldn't help but find it funny. This old man was indeed in charge of finance. He actually treated the expert that the Yang family had painstakingly nurtured as someone who was just wasting time. However, the so-called experts were not of much use most of the time, but they were useful at critical moments. One had to know that the more critical the moment, the more experts were needed to hold the fort. Even though the goateed old man was grumbling non-stop, Lung Ruoxue was clear that he was just saying it to vent his anger. When they really needed money to train him, they would take the money when it was time to. At the thought of this, Lung Ruoxue felt that she could not let Yang Shan take the blame for her, so she took the initiative to explain. These animals are actually my son's. It has nothing to do with Xiaoshan. Your son's? The old man with the goatee didn't expect Lung Ruoxue to say that. He was stunned for a moment before he looked at the 3 innocent animals in his arms and asked, "These animals are yours?" The 3 of them nodded, and then Saint Rouet comforted. "They're the 3 of us. Grandpa, don't worry. We won't let you raise them. Mom said that we'll take care of our own food. How can we do that? Although you're only a branch of the Yang family, our Yang family can't just ignore you. Since you've come to the main family, our main family can't treat you badly. How about this? They'll take care of these beasts for you. Their food standard will be the same as that black leopard. As for you 3 little kids, you just have to play happily. You don't have to worry about these things." The goateed old man thought for a moment and said. After listening to the goateed old man's words, all the Yang family members present widened their eyes in disbelief. When did the stingy chief financial officer become so generous? Or to a distant relative? From what she said, it seemed like the other family might be treated the same as them. Biased. He was too biased. The Yang family members were filled with envy and jealousy. It must be known that anyone who lived in the main family was basically a direct descendant of the Yang family. And the treatment of the direct descendant and the branch descendant had always been different. But now? Was third uncle trying to make a scene? Was he trying to cause a conflict between the direct and branch family? The Yang family descendants had similar thoughts, but only Yang Shan knew that his third uncle liked the 3 of them too much. Otherwise, he would not have treated Lung Ruoxue, who was a branch family member of the Yang family, in a different light. Otherwise, why would they say that she could give birth? Look at the 3 children. Not only are they smart, but they are also so cute and beautiful that people can't take their eyes off them. Yang Shan's heart ached. Third uncle was indeed biased. The goateed old man didn't care what these Yang family brats were thinking. He carried 3 of them and said to Lung Ruoxue, "Little Schwer, come home with third uncle." After he finished speaking, the goateed old man carried the 3 of them and walked in front. Lung Ruoxue glanced at the depressed Yang family members before pulling the evildoer along and following closely behind. She realized that she was starting to like this old urchin. The mighty team soon arrived at the Young family's main residence. The arrival of the animal army had completely alarmed the Young family. Hence, the moment Lung Ruoxue and the rest arrived, they were immediately surrounded. Lung Ruoxue and the rest of the animals were very calm. The old man with the goatee was even more satisfied with Lung Ruoxue. Look, this was the demeanor that a woman from the Young family should have. As he had a good impression of Lung Ruoxue and the others, the goateed old man was generous and gave them a detached villa not far from the Young family's main residence. Chapter 31:18. Mom said that we'll take care of our own food. 2. This detached villa had a certain amount of history in the Young family. Furthermore, those who had lived there before were usually the Young family's distinguished guests. Logically speaking, based on the identity of Lung Ruoxue that the goateed man knew, she, who was a distant relative, did not have the right to live there. However, she had 3 sons that the goateed old man had taken an interest in. On top of that, they had more people and animals, so it was the most suitable place to live. After all, the Young family had a strong foundation, and there would always be some pretentious people in the family. On the other hand, the goateed old man's arrangement was also to avoid unnecessary conflicts. Young Shan was very satisfied with his arrangement. Oh, third uncle was smart. However, Young Shan's satisfaction did not mean that everyone in the Young family would be satisfied. After knowing that the old man with the goatee was going to bring Lung Ruoxue and the rest to the villa, a young and beautiful lady immediately stood up to object. Third grandpa, is she an important guest of our Young family? When the woman said this, she looked at Lung Ruoxue arrogantly, as if she was looking down at her. Then she turned her beautiful eyes to the evildoer. Her small face instantly blushed and she quickly looked away. When Lung Ruoxue saw this scene, she only gave the demon a faint smile and glanced at him. The demon was instantly enraged. Where did this annoying woman come from? She caused his wife to misunderstand him. He clearly didn't do anything, didn't he? In an instant, the evildoer had added all the women of the Young family into his blacklist. At this moment, the goateed old man was unhappy that the woman doubted his decision, so he didn't see the subtle interaction between the 3 of them. Then the goateed old man said angrily, "Young Bing, you dare to doubt my decision?" "Third grandpa, I don't dare to doubt your decision. I just want to know if she is an important guest of our Young family." The woman named Yang Bing pointed her chin arrogantly at Lung Ruoxue as she asked, "So what if I am? So what if I'm not?" The old man with the goatee asked, "If that's the case, then of course Bing wouldn't have any objections to her living in that villa. But if not, wouldn't third grandpa break the Yang family's rules for her? Our Yang family has always been known for our strict family rules. If we make an exception because of her, what kind of prestige will third grandpa have in the family in the future?" Yang Bing said with a face full of righteousness. It had to be said that her words of justice had helped her find many allies. Of course, a considerable number of her allies were women who had the same thoughts as her. Their sense of superiority as direct descendants made it impossible for them to tolerate a girl from the branch family climbing over their heads. Furthermore, they had already heard of Lung Ruoxue's identity, and knew that she was only from the Yang family's branch family. However, the treatment of the Yang family's branch family had even climbed onto the heads of the Yang family's true young misses. How could they endure this? Furthermore, their deep jealousy towards Lung Ruoxue had caused them to treat Lung Ruoxue as their enemy. At the very least, in terms of protecting the rights and interests of the Yang family's young miss, they had to maintain a unanimous stand. Hearing Yang Bing's words, the goateed old man was so angry that his entire body trembled. He had never thought that he would actually be criticized by a junior today. What did she mean by this? Did she want to say that he was unfair? He was not fair, so what? I'm happy. As the Yang family's financial manager, I can arrange for them to live wherever I want. You're just a junior. What can you do? If you have the ability, you can give birth to cute triplets for me, and I will help you raise them." The old man with the goatee said willfully, "Third grandpa, are you doing this knowingly? She's only a distant relative of the Yang family. What right does she have to live in that villa?" Yang Bing directly pointed it out when he saw the situation. The old man with the goatee narrowed his eyes. A junior was planning to ride on his head today. He finally saw through that Yang Bing was deliberately looking for trouble. The hot-tempered old man with the goatee was about to start scolding, but Yang Shan quickly stopped him and whispered, "Third uncle, let me handle this matter." "Yes, little mountain, you're sensible, unlike some people who take advantage of others' power." The old man with the goatee was so angry that he didn't stop talking. "Third uncle." Yang Shan looked at the goateed old man with some disapproval. The goateed old man also knew that he had said something wrong, so he obediently closed his mouth. At this time, Yang Bing could not take it anymore and roared in anger. "Third grandpa, who are you calling a dog that's relying on its master's power? I'm the granddaughter of the head of the family. Do you think I'm a dog? Then what is the old master?" "Yang Bing, shut up. Third uncle didn't say anything about you, so don't take it to heart. What are you trying to do by dragging the family head into this? Do you want the head of the family to back you up?" Yang Shan reproached. "Little uncle, I want to shut up, but third grandpa's words are too much. He actually called me a dog." Yang Bing said indignantly, "Did third uncle scold you? I was so close to third uncle, but why didn't I hear him mention your name and call you a dog?" Yang Shan said with a faint smile. Yang Bing choked and was immediately speechless. That damned old man was obviously talking about her just now, but now that little uncle played with her like this, it seemed that she was rather self-righteous. "You better behave yourself. Don't think that you can do whatever you want in the Yang family just because you have the patriarch's support." Then Yang Shan warned. His warning made Lung Ruoxua laugh out loud. She realized that Xiao Shanzi was quite a bad person. Lung Ruoxua smiled, but Yang Shan was a little shy. Yang Bing, on the other hand, roared in rage. "What are you laughing at? What's so funny about that? Is it illegal to laugh?" Lung Ruoxua retorted before turning to Yang Shan. "Little Shanzi, you should know that our tempers are not very good, and we hate to be disturbed by others, so those random cats and dogs and whatnot. It's best if you don't appear in front of us, or you'll bear the consequences." After saying this, Lung Ruoxua turned to the old man with the goatee and said, "Third uncle, take us to the villa. There's no need to care about some random person. Xiao Shanzi will take care of it." Good. Follow me." The goateed old man loved the tone of Lung Ruoxua's voice so much that he eagerly brought Lung Ruoxua and the others to the villa. Everyone from the Yang family watched Lung Ruoxua and the others leave, and they were so angry that they could only stare. After arranging food and accommodation for Lung Ruoxua and the rest, the old man with the goatee returned to the main residence. As soon as he entered the main house, a young family member informed the old man with the goatee that the family head had invited him to the meeting room to participate in the elder meeting. When the goateed old man heard this, he immediately thought that Yang Bing might have complained to the family head, and the family head might want to question him. After all, he knew how much the family head doted on Yang Bing, who knew that the moment the goateed old man entered the meeting room, he would find the family head looking at him with a smile, and even warmly inviting him to sit down. Immediately, the goateed old man was a little confused. Could it be that he had to give her a sweet date first and then give her a slap? Just as the goateed old man was letting his thoughts run wild, Yang Shan gave his third uncle an ambiguous look and then winked at him. This time, the goateed old man was even more confused. What was the meaning of this? Following that, the goateed old man heard the family head praise. "Elder Huan, you've done well. What he did was good." Seeing the old man with the goatee, who was also Elder Huan, looking confused, the patriarch of the Yang family couldn't help but laugh. "Your arrangement for Yang Shui and the others is very good." "Oh, master, don't you blame me for being biased?" Elder Huan replied and then asked curiously. He admitted that he was biased. "So what? Bite him? It's good to be biased. Yang Shui and the others are our Yang family's honored guests. You must entertain them well," the patriarch of the Yang family warned. Elder Huan nodded his head numbly. There was one thing he didn't understand. Wasn't Yang Shui a distant relative of the Yang family? How did he become an honored guest of the Yang family? This isn't right. However, at this moment, The patriarch and elders of the Yang family did not explain anything to him. The higher-ups of the Yang family in the conference room were immersed in the great joy of Lung Ruoxue and the others' visit. This was a peerless expert that their ancestors had repeatedly warned them not to offend. He didn't expect Yang Shan to invite him. As for Yang Shan, who had made an indispensable contribution, the patriarch of the Yang family and the elders decided to give him the first credit. Of course, they had to inform the old ancestor as soon as possible. Presumably, the old ancestor would be very happy. This time's elder conference could be said to be the most relaxed and joyful one the Yang family patriarch and elders had ever experienced. Until the end of the meeting, Elder Huan was still in a state of mind-wandering. Seeing this, Yang Shan directly pulled Elder Huan to his room. When they were in the room, Yang Shan revealed the identities of Lung Ruoxue and the others. After hearing this, Elder Huan was completely dumbfounded. There was shock and disappointment. He was shocked because he never thought that those people were the super experts that the old ancestor spoke of. Why didn't they look like them at all? Apart from their extremely beautiful appearance and temperament. Disappointment was even easier to understand. Such an outstanding person actually had no relationship with the Yang family at all. Sob, sob, sob. His 3 cute little grandchildren. Why wasn't he from the Yang family? After a moment of daze, Elder Huan said angrily, "You brat, why didn't you tell me earlier that they were the experts the ancestor spoke of?" I actually said so many things I shouldn't have said in front of them. I've thrown them all away. Just the thought of letting Lung Ruoxue and the others know how stingy he was made Elder Huan's old face burn. Didn't I say that I'll explain it to you later? Don't you know how many people were there at that time? What if their identities were leaked? They were here to participate in the elite competition, so their identities had to be kept a secret. In addition, at that time, I didn't know that they were the experts that the ancestor had reported to me. I only heard about them from the patriarch and the elders. Yang Shan said to Elder Huan with an expression that said, "You can't wrong me." Elder Huan nodded. "That's true. You've always been a stubborn person. It's too difficult for you to care about the family's major affairs." Yang Shan was very depressed when he heard this. "Third uncle, are you praising me? Little Mountain, when are you going to give birth to a few triplets for your third uncle to play with?" After a moment of melancholy, Elder Huan asked again. Yang Shan looked at his third uncle as if he had seen a ghost. "Can you have triplets just because you want to?" How lucky was he? Play? What if he broke it? Yang Shan, who had frightened Elder Huan, decided to leave his third uncle's place as soon as possible. As the saying went, action is better than action. Yang Shan took advantage of the fact that Elder Huan was not paying attention, and quickly left his room to look for Lung Ruoxue and the rest. Chapter 31:19. No, I can't wait anymore. 1. When he reached Lung Ruoxue's place, Yang Shan's heart felt stifled when he saw her. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue and the rest were having lunch. They also had 4 dishes and a soup, but the standard of the dishes was obviously better than many of the Yang family members. Yang Shan knew that this was definitely third uncle's arrangement. When third uncle was arranging this, he was clearly not clear about the identity of Lung Ruoxue and the others. What did this mean? It meant that Lung Ruoxue and the others had already stolen third uncle's heart. Oh, third uncle, how could your will be so weak? Weren't they just 3 little kids? Although the 3 of them are very cute, you can't lose your integrity. At this moment, Yang Shan's feelings were a little complicated. Lung Ruoxue did not know whether to laugh or cry when she glanced at Yang Shan, who looked a little constipated. This guy was jealous of what they were eating, okay? Little Mountain, do you want to eat together? Lung Ruoxue, who was secretly laughing, asked indifferently. Can I? Yang Shan was a little embarrassed to ask back, and his face was even a little red. Especially when he saw that his leopard son had already run to the 3 of them to ask for food without caring about his image. He felt even more uncomfortable. After hearing Yang Shan's words, Lung Ruoxue rolled her eyes at him and said, "Little Mountain, did you take the wrong medicine? I didn't see you being so shy when you were eating at my house. What kind of temper are you throwing?" He didn't throw a tantrum. Yang Shan was silent. This is my house. You are my guests now. How can I snatch my guests' food? After a while, Yang Shan explained. It's all right. Your third uncle said that if we don't have enough to eat, there's more. Lung Ruoxue said nonchalantly. Yang Shan was inexplicably indignant. Sob, sob, sob. He knew that his third uncle's heart was biased toward the moon. Uncle Yang Shan, look at how self-conscious your kitten is. You're too melodramatic. At this time, Saint Rue, who could not stand it anymore, said unhappily. Yang Shan was very worried. He had to let a little kid educate him again. By the way, when can we fight? Then Saint Rue continued to ask. In 3 days. Yang Shan replied gloomily. It's going to take so long. AI. The days are so hard to bear. After hearing Yang Shan's words, Saint Rue frowned gloomily. Yang Shan couldn't help but think to himself, how much do the 3 of you like to fight? It was obvious that 3 of them were really boring. After lunch, the 3 of them, who had nothing to do, asked the local black leopard to bring them for a walk. Yang Shan stayed behind to stare at Lung Ruoxue and the others. Although it was in his own home, Yang Shan did not know why he suddenly felt uneasy. Little Mountain, do you have something to tell us? Lung Ruoxue asked after a long time. No, I don't. Yang Shan said hurriedly. He did not know what to say, but he was worried for no reason. Just as Yang Shan was hesitating, suddenly, a direct descendant of the Yang family ran to him in a panic and shouted. Not good, little uncle, they're fighting. Why are you panicking? Who's fighting? Yang Shan asked with his eyes wide open. His heart was filled with disappointment. The Yang family's descendants really had no manners. Didn't they see that there were guests here? It's Yang Nan and the others, he. The direct descendant of the Yang family was so scared that he stuttered, unable to complete his sentence. And those 3 little kids. The direct descendant of the Yang family glanced at Lung Ruoxue before speaking. What? Yang Shan was furious. How could this be? Wasn't this courting death? Of course, the 3 of them were not the ones who were looking for death. When Lung Ruoxue and the rest heard this, they were very calm. They knew that their own child would not be at a disadvantage. When Yang Shan saw Lung Ruoxue and the rest acting as if this matter had nothing to do with them, he became even more anxious. The meaning was obvious, they were not going to get involved in this. I'm going to deal with Yang Nan and the others now. Yang Shan looked at Lung Ruoxue carefully. As you wish. Lung Ruoxue smiled. You can't be so casual, kiss. Yang Shan couldn't care much, he turned around and ran out. When the direct descendant of the Yang family who came to report saw this, he thought that Yang Shan was worried about the 3 children. At the same time, he was also afraid that Lung Ruoxue would be anxious, so he stayed behind to comfort her. You're Yang Shui, right? Don't worry, with little uncle here, your 3 sons will be fine. When he said this, Yang Shan's handsome little face was still slightly red, and he immediately lowered his head shyly. Thank you for your concern, but I'm not worried about my 3 sons at all, Lung Ruoxue replied calmly. When the direct descendants of the Yang family heard Lung Ruoxue's words, they were a little confused. However, the moment he raised his head to look at Lung Ruoxue, he could clearly feel a cold glint that was as cold as a sword coming towards him. Instantly, his entire body quivered. Then he heard a cold humph and his little face turned pale. His little heart also started to tremble violently. Sob, sob, sob. So scary. The direct descendants of the Yang family didn't even think, and were so scared that they turned around and ran. Lung Ruoxue looked at the demon helplessly, and patted his head to comfort him. The demon instantly became Sundara. At the same time, Yang Shan had already rushed to the scene of the incident. However, before he could get there, Yang Shan saw the 3 of them and his leopard son leisurely strolling back. Saint Rue, are you all okay? Yang Shan asked with concern. I'm fine. Even if something happened, it wouldn't be us. Rue Sheng was full of confidence. His cheapskate father had said that in this world, the 3 of them were invincible. Of course, his biological mother had also said that they could not simply bully ordinary people just because they were strong. However, the ordinary people took the initiative to bully them first, so they had defended themselves. Did anyone die? Yang Shan wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and asked again. Don't worry. He's definitely alive. Saint Rui laughed evilly, looking at Saint Rui's smile. Yang Shan really could not let go, but what could he say? He knew very well that these three would never take the initiative to provoke others. Therefore he could only say, as long as you're alive. After following his 3 leopard sons, who still had their own family, back to the villa where Lung Ruoxue and the others were staying, Yang Shan's heart was in a mess. As expected, after about 10 minutes, a few young family members came looking for him in an aggressive manner. Looking at the angry young family members who were questioning him, Yang Shan felt a little troubled. Who is it? You injured my son? Get the hell out here. Without waiting for Yang Shan to speak, a tall and burly man shouted at the top of his voice. When he was shouting loudly, Lung Ruoxue and the others only looked at him calmly. After he was done shouting, no one paid him any attention. Seeing this, the burly man was completely enraged. The tiger-like eyes looked around at the people sitting in the garden of the courtyard. He was secretly surprised. It was the first time he had seen these people in front of him. He had wanted to see who was more guilty. That person must be the one who had injured his son. However, after looking around, he did not know who to settle the score with. Chapter 31:20. No, I can't wait anymore too. At this time, Yang Shan walked to the side of the burly man, pulled his clothes and whispered, Fifth brother, calm down. Don't do anything rash. The people here were not to be trifled with. You want me to calm down? Xiao Shan, my son has been injured by someone and his life is uncertain. How can I calm down? When the burly man saw that Yang Shan not only did not help him, but also had the idea of shielding the criminal, he felt the anger in his heart rise to the top of his head. Life or death? Yang Shan was shocked. Was it that serious? Yang Shan did not know what to say, but he was still alive. After that, Yang Shan looked at Lung Ruoxue for help, but Lung Ruoxue did not even look at him. At this moment, Saint Rui stood in front of the burly man and grinned. Although I don't know which one is your son, I think I was the one who injured him. And us. Rui Zi and Rui Qiao also said in unison, and stood in front of the burly man. Seeing this, the black leopard also took a step forward. Although it didn't use its claws, it was an accomplice because it had cheered for the 3 of them. This time, it was the burly man's turn to be dumbfounded. Little Mountain, this leopard is yours, right? Turning around, the burly man pointed at the Black Panther and asked Yang Shan. It's mine. Yang Shan admitted that he knew his son's family. He could not deny it. Then what's it doing here? The burly man roared. When the black leopard heard this, it blinked its big black eyes and put on an especially innocent look. It did have a share. Yang Shan did not know how to start, so he could only pretend to be silent. And his appearance made the burly man even angrier. After that, the burly man pointed at Lung Ruoxue and the rest in the courtyard and scolded. You have so many adults, and you have the nerve to let 3 milk babies and a leopard take the blame? You guys are too shameless. I despise you all. Uncle, we really did it. Please don't accuse my family's elders. Seeing the burly man biting like a mad dog, Saint Rui said unhappily. It's you? What a joke. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old child that's easy to fool? If it was really you, why didn't you say anything when I asked the person who beat my son to come out? It was clearly someone here who gave you a look, and that's why you stood up. You still want to lie to me? The burly man imagined. When Saint Rui heard this, he sighed softly and then said, You told us to come out, so we have to come out. Who do you think you are? Besides, we won't get lost, so we didn't come out. The burly man was stunned for a moment, then continued to ask hesitantly, It's really you? I don't believe it. If you don't believe me, let's have a fight. Saint Rui was too lazy to explain, and planned to solve it directly with force. The burly man wanted to laugh after hearing Saint Rui's words, but when he saw the serious look on the little man's face, he could not laugh. Was this kid for real? Come fight. You'll believe me after a fight. Don't worry, it's just sparring. I won't hurt you. Saint Rui comforted. The burly man was a little depressed. Why did this little child's tone sound so much like his young family's elders? Are we going to fight? Seeing that the burly man did not respond, Saint Rue asked reluctantly. Little guy, give me some face and let my fifth brother go. He still has to participate in the elite competition. Seeing that things could not be settled, young Shan had to step in. I want to give you face, but this uncle doesn't believe me. Saint Rue said helplessly. Fifth brother, come with me for a moment. I have something to tell you. Knowing that the crux of the matter was still on the burly man, young Shan pulled the still angry burly man to a secluded corner. The two of them muttered for a long time before the burly man finally returned to the courtyard unwillingly. The burly man looked at Rue Sheng and said with a complicated expression, I believe that you injured my son, but you were clearly stronger than him and still attacked him. You have to give me an explanation, right? You want an explanation? Rue Zi asked. Yes, I only have one son. You must give me an explanation. The burly man saw that the little guy was quite easy to talk to, and felt a little uncomfortable for his previous recklessness. Mom, he wants an explanation. Saint Rue then turned to look at Lung Ruoxue. Let him ask his own son. Lung Ruoxue said indifferently. Did you hear that? Go and ask your son. Don't underestimate us just because we're young. We're not pushovers. Saint Rue turned his head back to the burly man and said. The burly man was at a loss when he heard this. Just now, Xiao Shanzi had already secretly told him the identity of these people, and said that this matter should have nothing to do with the three little children. He still believed Yang Shan's words, but he had to understand the cause and effect of this, right? His son was still injured. More importantly, his son was unconscious. Who was he to ask? Little Ruisheng, young Nan is currently unconscious. Even if you want to ask him, you have to wake him up first, right? Seeing through the burly man's thoughts, young Shan looked at Saint Rue and said. He knew that this little guy had a lot of good things in his hands. Although the little guy rarely gave it to him, his leopard son had benefited a lot. Therefore, he was thinking whether the little guy could be kind and let the little brat wake up first. This way, it would be easier to figure out the truth. Saint Rue nodded, and then took out a pill and handed it over. He said, when he wakes up, let him explain everything. Then I'll knock him out. If it wasn't to prove his innocence, he wouldn't have been so kind. When Yang Shan heard this, he was drenched in sweat. This little guy was indeed not to be trifled with. However, he still quickly took the pills and pulled the burly man and the rest away from Lung Ruoxue and the others. The next day, when Yang Shan appeared, Elder Huan also followed. Looking at Lung Ruoxue and the rest, the two of them hesitated to speak. Lung Ruoxue smiled faintly and said, I'm not interested in your Yang family's affairs, so you just have to remember that I don't want the same thing to happen again, or you'll bear the consequences. As for those Yang family members, since my son has already beaten them up, I won't pursue it any further. Let them know what's best for them. When they heard Lung Ruoxue's words, the two of them heaved a sigh of relief. Even though they had already thought of all sorts of excuses before they came, they did not know what to say after seeing Lung Ruoxue and the others. The Yang family disciples had brought this upon themselves. Naturally, the Yang family wouldn't dare to have any complaints. However, they were afraid that Lung Ruoxue and the others would be resentful. Now that they saw Lung Ruoxue's tolerance, the two of them were touched from the bottom of their hearts. Did you see? This was a true expert. How magnanimous. In reality, Lung Ruoxue felt that even though this matter was caused by a certain Yang family member, her son had already dealt with that person and did not suffer any harm. Naturally, she could not be bothered to argue with these ordinary people. However, she definitely did not expect that she would become a kind person in the hearts of these two people. Was she kind? Lung Ruoxue didn't think that she was that kind. More importantly, her kindness depended on the person. Now that there was no big issue, she naturally didn't need to keep harping on this matter. After understanding her attitude, the Yang family patriarch and the elders were relieved. However, Lung Ruoxue and her husband could let this matter go. But the Yang family had decided to severely punish Yang Nan and the others who had almost caused a great disaster. Although they were injured, they had asked for it. The after effect of Yang Nan's incident was that the Yang family regardless of whether they were direct or branch family members, became more vigilant when they saw the three of them who had nothing to do and were wandering outside most of the time. These three little kids were too powerful. How were they little kids? He was clearly a fierce tiger in the coat of a little baby. Ever since the three of them had shown their might, the Yang family's younger generation almost didn't dare to appear in front of them, except for those who had a good relationship with the three. As for the elite competition that Yang Shan was talking about, it finally began under the anticipation of the three. The day before the elite competition, the ancient martial arts families arrived. On the day of the official competition, the Yang family's old ancestor also returned to the Yang family. The handsome young man from the Yang family was also with him. In fact, when the two of them received the news that the three pets had come to visit their family, they immediately rushed back to the main house. However, the place they had stayed at was a little far away, so by the time they returned home, it was already midnight on the day of the elite competition. The two of them did not dare to disturb Lung Ruoxue and the others, so they waited patiently. This result also caused the two of them to be extremely excited when they saw the three pets on the day of the competition. If it wasn't for the fact that the timing wasn't right, the two of them would have probably pounced forward. However, as soon as they thought of the three's terrifying parents and the fact that they were still in front of everyone, the two of them forced themselves to hold back. In the face of the two's excitement, the three naturally saw them. After smiling at them, the three hid among the Yang family's team. Seeing that the three of them had responded to them, the Yang family's ancestor and the little handsome man became more and more excited. Their performance also made the ancestors of the other families sitting next to them puzzled. The ancestors of the various families wanted to ask the two of them what was going on, but this pair of grandfather and grandson just had to play Tai Chi with them, not knowing anything at all. Helplessly, the ancestors of the various families could only suppress the question in their hearts and watch the competition absent-mindedly. The Yang family's old ancestor and the little handsome boy were secretly laughing. Don't blame them for being selfish. Who wouldn't think for their own family? They weren't generous enough to share information about the three of them with the other families. As the match began, the three of them became more and more impatient. Seeing the three of them pouting unhappily, Yang Shan, who had been beside them, could not help but ask, "What's wrong with you three little fellows? When will it be our turn to play? I've been waiting for a long time." Rui Jin spoke on behalf of his two brothers who were not in a good mood. After he finished speaking, he even took a bite of the fruit in his hand. Yang Shan was speechless. It had not even been half an hour, and they had been waiting for so long? Did it have to be so exaggerated? Then he squatted down and looked at the three of them. Be patient. It's the adult group's competition now. The underage group's competition is behind. Still behind? No, I can't wait anymore. I'm going to fight now. Hearing this, Saint Rui quickly said. After he finished speaking, Saint Rui was about to go up the ring. Chapter 31-21. The glutton's anger won. When Yang Shan saw this, he quickly stopped him and picked up Saint Rui, who was about to run up to the ring, and begged, "Little ancestor, it's not your turn yet, so let's calm down." "I can't stay calm. I've been waiting for days. I'm going to fight now," Saint Rui said with an uncooperative look. "Don't you have so many sparring partners at home? Why are you still so impatient?" Yang Shan could not understand. "I can't even beat the ones at home," Rui Sheng said gloomily. Yang Shan was silent. He couldn't beat the one at home, so he had to beat the one outside? They were so pitiful. Who had he offended? Yang Shan was speechless and asked the heavens. Just as he was in a daze, Saint Rui escaped from Yang Shan's arms and continued to run towards the ring. Fortunately, Yang Shan was quick and caught him. Otherwise, this little guy would have gotten his way. After Saint Rui was caught by Yang Shan, he kept struggling. Yang Shan did not dare to let go at all, for fear that he would be taken away by this little guy who was as cunning as a fox. Because he was being hugged too tightly and could not break free, Rui Sheng simply gave up. Then, tears started to well up in his eyes, and he opened his mouth and started to cry. When he cried, Yang Shan was completely dumbfounded. Why did he start crying? Not only that, when Rui Shen cried like that, Rui Zi, who was at the side, saw it and rolled his eyes. He also learned from his brother and started to howl. This time, it was considered a mess. The two little children's loud cries soon attracted most people's attention. For a moment, surprise, accusation, dissatisfaction, anger, and all kinds of complicated gazes were directed at Yang Shan. Yang Shan felt wronged. Who did he offend? He clearly did not do anything right. However, no matter how aggrieved Yang Shan felt, in everyone's eyes, he was a bad guy who bullied the little boy and made him cry. Among the many gazes, there were a few that were particularly strong in their condemnation, so strong that he felt a little guilty. But he swore that he really didn't do anything. My two little ancestors, please don't cry, I was wrong. I was really wrong. Yang Shan begged for mercy. At this moment, he really felt that the children were too troublesome, especially the triplets. When one cried, the other two would definitely join in the fun. Wait, 3? Why were there only 2 of them crying? The other one? Yang Shan felt a little uneasy and subconsciously looked at where the other baby was. Where did it go? Yang Shan looked around anxiously. All of a sudden, his pupils contracted, and his eyes widened as he looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief. By cakes! He knew that the triplets would not be easy to deal with. She didn't even look at it, and the other one had climbed up the stage while no one was looking. The stage's steps were very high. Rui Qiao's small arms and legs climbing was a bit exhausting, but right now he was only 2 steps away from the center of the stage. Yang Shan secretly calculated, and felt that he should be able to stop the little guy. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, he immediately walked towards the steps of the stage. However, just as he took a step, he clearly felt a heavy weight on his leg. Looking down, he saw that Rui Zi was hugging his thigh. Rui Yi raised his little head, tears glistening in his eyes. The grievance on his beautiful little face made even a person with a heart as hard as iron surrender. More importantly, Yang Shan was certain that as long as he continued to walk towards the ring, this little guy would definitely start howling again. From Rui Zi's teary eyes, Yang Shan seemed to see a devil's smile. Sob, sob, sob. What triplets? This is really too hateful. Don't you think so? Yang Shan knew that he had fallen into a trap. These 3 little fellows' cooperation was simply flawless. One was crying in his arms to disturb his thoughts. One was hugging his thigh to stop him from moving forward, and the other one took advantage of his unguarded state to head towards their destination. The arena. Shwa shwa shwa. 3 cunning little foxes. Yang Shan was filled with grief and indignation. What happened to the promised revolutionary friendship? Was it fed to the pigs? Could it be that they couldn't stand the test after being together for so long? The sad Yang Shan looked resentfully at the little guy in his arms and hugging his thigh. Sob, sob, sob. Where's the Yang family? Why didn't the referee come to help him? Didn't he see a little boy running up the stage? In fact, the Yang family saw it. But as long as they thought of the strength of these 3, no one dared to act rashly. The non-Yang family members present also saw it, but they didn't take the little boy seriously. Naturally, they didn't think that this little boy would have such great killing power. The only thing they were a little worried about was that the 2 sides fighting in the ring would accidentally hurt the little guy. However, according to the rules of the competition, they didn't dare to go forward to stop it. Fortunately, the ring was big enough, so they could only hope that the little guy's luck was good. Don't be affected by the battle above. There's a little kid on the stage. Is he from your Yang family? At this moment, an old man sitting beside the Yang family ancestor asked with interest. Yes, it's mine, the Yang family's old ancestor nodded. In his heart, he couldn't help but think that it would be good if it was his family's child. However, in front of outsiders, he could only admit it. He couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat for the 2 people fighting in the ring at this time. If this child was accidentally injured, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, it was obvious that his worries were unnecessary. Rui Jin was not that stupid. As soon as he got on the ring, he found an empty space and planned to finish the fruit in his hand, and then hee. The old man who saw this was even more interested and said with a smile, I didn't expect your Yang family to have such an interesting little kid. Why have I never heard you mention him before? Why should I tell you? The Young family's old ancestor said unhappily. Are we not old friends? Why are you so stingy? You didn't even tell me that you had such a fun descendant. Did you not know? Our kids aren't as fun as yours. The old man said with a face of relief. I'm warning you, don't even think about that kid. Upon hearing this, the Young family's ancestor suddenly became serious. The child's parents were not to be trifled with. Their child was not a toy. How could they let you play with him? Could you afford to play with him? Look at how stingy you are. Oh, and you have triplets. No wonder you want it so much. Triplets are rare. Suddenly, the old man noticed that Yangshan had two other children. They looked exactly the same as the one on the ring. He was even more interested. Although the Yang family's old ancestor really didn't want to pay attention to this old man, he really couldn't watch his old friend get into trouble, so he said very seriously, I'll say it for the last time, don't even think about those three little kids, or you'll have to bear the consequences. Are you for real? I just want to cherish those three little kids. Why do you have to be like this? The old man was a little dissatisfied. This old man from the Yang family had always been stingy. In the past, he was only stingy with money and things. Now he was even stingy with people. This was really too much. Chapter 31:22. The Glutton's Anger, 2. I'm doing this for your own good. The father of these three children is not to be trifled with. Seeing that his old friend was so stubborn, the Yang family ancestor had to reveal the other party's identity. After hearing this, the old man became even more curious. Not to be provoked? Even with our status, we can't afford to offend them? I can't afford to offend them. The old ancestor of the Yang family said helplessly. It can't be. The old man was surprised. Although he wanted to ask for more details, he could see that the old man from the Yang family would definitely not tell him, so he could only temporarily put aside his curiosity. The Yang family's old ancestor also didn't pay any more attention to the old man, and instead focused his gaze on Rui Ju in the ring. I haven't seen it for so long, but this little thing is still so gluttonous. Looking at Rui Jin's cute appearance of a little hamster eating fruit with her cheeks puffed up, the Yang family's old ancestor only felt his heart fill with joy. Cute. She was really too cute. But soon after, the Yang family's old ancestor was a little depressed. Why didn't the Yang family have such an adorable child? At this moment, he could understand the old man's feelings of excitement. We're both in the same boat. This child was not his. It was only in his family's name. The Yang family's old ancestor was quite depressed. Unfortunately, the three of them didn't know that his mood had such a huge fluctuation in a short moment. At this time, Rui Sheng and Rui Zi finally tried to get rid of Yangshan, and the two ran towards their brother. Yangshan looked at their backs helplessly. Then he lowered his head and looked at the black panther that was hugging his thigh. He felt extremely miserable. Sob, his son had betrayed him. He was so sad. The black leopard faced his father's resentful gaze, and didn't dare to look at him. In truth, he didn't want to, but his little master had threatened him. If he didn't take over his little master's job of hugging onto his father's thigh, his little master would say that he didn't want him anymore. Sob, he couldn't live without his little master's even bigger thigh. So Dad, it's been hard on you. You won't lose anything anyway, right? Right. Junior Leopard only felt guilty for a moment, and then he didn't care at all. It knew that with its little master around, its father could do nothing about it. Just like that, Yangshan and Bao's son could only helplessly stare at each other and watch the other two kids climb up the ring. Yangshan, who didn't dare to imagine what would happen next, could only cover his face and not look. Sob. The next scene would be too beautiful. He couldn't bear to look at it. Sure enough, as Yangshan expected, as soon as the two of them climbed up the ring, it immediately caused a bigger commotion. It was rare to see triplets gathered together. Everyone was surprised and worried. Except for the Yang family, no one knew what these three little babies wanted to do. No one would have thought that the three little kids wanted to fight. More importantly, the three of them were really too small. Their height only reached the calves of the two people in the ring. What was this? At this time, The two people in the ring also realized that the situation was not right and quickly stopped. Previously, when there was only one child, although the two of them were not affected much, they still had to be careful in case they accidentally hurt the child. Now that there were 3 children, they did not dare to continue fighting. Otherwise, if they hurt one of the children, it would be troublesome if the parents came to find them. The two of them didn't know why the little boy had run up to the ring, but the current situation was obviously abnormal. For a moment, the two of them didn't know what to do. They could only stand in place foolishly and look helplessly at the honored guest seats where the Yang family ancestor and the others were sitting. Unfortunately, the people in the VIP seats didn't notice the two people's eyes at all. At this time, they were all looking at the 3 with interest and secretly praised these 3 little kids for their courage. Were they not afraid? He definitely wasn't afraid of 3. Not only were they not afraid, the 3 of them even beckoned at the 2 men with their fingers after glancing at them. One of them pointed at himself and said, "Kid, you called me." The 3 of them nodded, and then turned their eyes to another person. "You're also calling me?" the man asked. You two can come at me together. Let's have a fight," Saint Rouet said with a smile. The two of them were sweating profusely. If these words were said by an adult, the two of them might think that the other party was provoking them. However, the person who said these words was a little child. How were they supposed to react? Accept the challenge? That was impossible. Not accepting the challenge? The 3 little children looked like they were about to cry again, which really put them in a difficult position. Of course, it was absolutely impossible to fight with the milk babies. If word got out that they bullied the 3 milk babies, how could they still be human? The 2 of them shook their heads in rejection. Seeing this, Saint Rouet was a little annoyed. He knew that these people judged people by their appearance. So what if they were young? He could look down on them when they were young? With his black eyes that were spitting fire, Saint Rouet shouted and asked, "Are you a man? If you're a man, then fight us." As soon as he said this, the entire place fell silent. Many people were a little petrified, and they could not react in time to watch the domineering little boy go crazy. Yang Shan felt it the most. He had been with the 3 of them for the longest time, and could be said to know them quite well. It was because of this that he was not surprised to hear these words. However, he believed that not everyone's mental ability was as strong as his. These 3 demonic children would definitely scare more than half of the people today and give them a heart attack. At the same time, Yang Shan also believed that the 3 of them would not care if other people had heart disease. They only wanted to fight. The facts proved that Yang Shan's guess was absolutely correct. After hearing what he said, the 2 people in front of him were dumbfounded, and the anger in Saint Rouet's heart grew even bigger. What kind of man was this? He really couldn't stand it. "Now immediately, fight us!" Saint Rouet shouted in anger. His shout finally made the 2 people in front of him return to normal. However, when they heard what Ruisheng said, they could only smile helplessly. One of them even coaxed, "Kid, don't mess around. We're in the middle of a competition. Go down and play. It's dangerous here. Be careful not to hurt you. Yes, quickly go down. Your mother must be looking for you." Another person chimed in. "Don't coax the child. Mommy won't look for us. In addition, we're not afraid of danger. We're here to fight you. Isn't it just a competition? We're also participants." He's representing the Yang family, so let's fight now. "Oh, it's too slow to fight one by one. You guys can come at me together," Saint Rouet said impatiently. He had been waiting for a few days, and today was the day. No matter what, he had to get a good beating. A contestant? The Yang family? Everyone present heard what Saint Rouet said, and they all turned to look at the Yang family members beside them. Some of the Yang family members who knew the truth were looking at them with a guilty look. Some of the Yang family members were thinking that these 3 little ancestors were from the Yang family, but unfortunately they were not. I say, old man Yang, so what if your Yang family doesn't have anyone else? They actually let 3 little kids compete. Are you looking down on us? Or is the Yang family just a bunch of useless fools? Another old man in the VIP seats asked with a look of disdain after hearing what Ruisheng said. The Yang family's old ancestor didn't say a word. as if he didn't hear anything. His eyes were still fixed on the three in the ring, thinking to himself, I don't know if this elite competition will go smoothly, but as long as these three are happy, it's fine. As for the elite competition, there will be more in the future. Old man Yang, I'm talking to you. Seeing that the Yang family's old ancestor was ignoring him, the old man was instantly enraged and roared. The Yang family's old ancestor only looked at him indifferently and coldly spat out 3 words. You're so noisy. Then he turned his head back to the arena. You. The old man was so angry that he pointed at the Yang family's old ancestor and started scolding. Good old Yang, is this how you treat your guests? And you even let 3 little kids go on stage to disrupt the competition. What do you think you're doing? Is it because the Yang family wasn't prepared this time, so you deliberately sent the little kid to cause trouble? I'm telling you, if you don't give us an explanation today, we won't let you off. It's not over who's afraid of who. Moreover, can you represent everyone? The Yang family's old ancestor said disapprovingly. Of course I can. If you don't believe me, you can ask everyone if they're all asking you for an explanation. The old man said with confidence. But unfortunately, other than him, the others were smart enough not to speak. As the saying goes, the gun hits the bird that takes the lead. Right now, the old man was the bird that took the lead in their eyes. More importantly, this was the Yang family's territory, so they believed that even if they didn't ask, the Yang family's old ancestor would explain. For a moment, the atmosphere was a little cold. You guys. The old man was so angry that his whole body was trembling. So noisy, all of you shut up. At this moment, an unusually clear voice rang out in everyone's ears. Everyone immediately paled in shock and looked toward the center of the stage in disbelief. Was this what one of the little babies shouted? How was this possible? No one could believe it. How could a little baby have such a strong lung capacity? This didn't make sense. It was definitely not scientific. The crowd looked at each other with the same expression on their faces. He was shouted at by a little kid? The one who was shouting at them was Ruijin, who had been eating the entire time since he entered the ring. The reason why he told everyone to shut up was mostly because they had disturbed his mood to eat. And this made him very annoyed. You guys don't understand the world of foodies. Foodies hated to be disturbed when they were eating. Also, these 2 people on the stage, whether they fought or not, it was really annoying. In an instant, Ruijin found them to be somewhat unpleasing to the eye. He wasted the precious time of the glutton, damn it. Thinking up to this point, Ruiqiao directly threw out a fruit core that was just finished, and it hit one of the people on the stage in the chest. This time, the person immediately groaned in pain, and then he clearly felt a heart-piercing pain in his chest. Following that person spat out a mouthful of blood and fell on the stage. Chapter 31-23. We're not casual people. 1. This scene caused everyone to turn pale with fright. What was going on? Who did this? Why did he suddenly vomit blood and fall to the ground? As the fruit core was too small, many people did not see who did it. However, the person next to the unlucky guy saw it very clearly, and was so scared that his face turned pale. He was the closest to the unlucky guy and naturally knew how the unlucky guy vomited blood and fell to the ground. But how could such a small fruit core have such great power? He didn't believe it. He couldn't believe it. This was too surreal. Bewildered, he couldn't help but raise his head to look at Ruijin, his heart filled with question marks. Was it really this little kid? A fruit core? Just as he was fantasizing, Ruijin had already finished another fruit, and was looking at him with the core in his hand. Instantly, his little heart started to tremble uncontrollably. What was he doing? Looking at a certain someone whose little face was deathly pale, and whose legs were obviously a little weak, Ruijin snorted in disdain and asked, do you want to fight with us? Aye. A certain someone was so nervous that he stuttered. Upon hearing this, a certain someone was completely depressed. Whoa, what did this mean? One had to know that a certain someone had lived for so many years and considered himself a strong person. But no one had ever said such words to him. Today a little boy had said such things to him. If he really found a group of people to beat up the little boy, How could he continue to live in the ancient martial arts world in the future? A certain someone was so conflicted that his intestines were about to be tangled. And Rui Jin saw that he did not speak for a long time, and became angry again. It's so dark, it really doesn't look like a man. Once Rui Jin was enraged, the fruit core in his hand was thrown out again. Following that, a certain someone was just like the unlucky person before, spitting out blood and falling to the ground. This time, the onlookers were not only surprised. They were a little panicked and thought that someone was trying to attack them. The scene was in a mess. In the face of such a situation, the people in the honored guest seats felt helpless. Because of the good position and the higher strength than the others, they all saw that after one of the little children threw a fruit core, the two people in the ring vomited blood and fainted. Although they didn't want to believe what they saw was real, they saw it with their own eyes. It couldn't lie, right? Old man Yang, what should we do now? Where did this little kid come from? He's actually trained to use hidden weapons. The old man, who had a good relationship with the Yang family's ancestor, sighed helplessly. The Yang family's old ancestor was silent for a moment, thinking, that might not be a hidden weapon. If you've seen the means of her parents, I'm afraid you won't be so surprised. Unfortunately, he couldn't say this out loud and could only keep it in his stomach. Old man Yang, what do you mean? You're taking out this little doll to slap our faces? The other old man saw that the Yang family's old ancestor didn't speak, and also angrily questioned. After hearing his words, the Yang family's ancestor looked up at him and smiled. What, now you don't think that our Yang family is a hopeless case? Let me tell you, it's not that our Yang family doesn't have people. These three little kids are also one of the strongest in our family, so they are absolutely qualified to represent our family in the competition. How is this possible? The words of the Yang family's old ancestor had shocked everyone in the VIP seats, but they really couldn't believe it. However, these words came from the mouth of the Yang family's old ancestor, so they had no choice but to believe it. What's impossible? Haven't you seen a monster before? Some children are born geniuses, and unfortunately, these three children are geniuses among geniuses. The Yang family's old ancestor said proudly, as if he was also proud. Humph. You can keep bragging. So what if the third baby was a monster? With just the three of them, how could they defeat so many of our elites? Only a ghost would believe this. The old man said disapprovingly. You don't believe me? The Yang family's old ancestor laughed evilly. Humph. Of course he didn't. No matter how monstrous these three children are, they're still just a few little babies. How do you expect us to believe them? The old man said matter-of-factly. Then, do you want to try? The Yang family's old ancestor asked with a smile. I'll try. Who's afraid of who? If these three kids can really defeat all the experts of our ancient martial families, then for the next 100 years, our families will follow your Yang family's lead. Of course, if your Yang family loses, you will also have to listen to our orders. How about it? The old man said ruthlessly. This could be considered a bet with the old man from the Yang family. Of course, he felt that the other party definitely wouldn't dare to make such a big bet with him. 100 years. It wasn't just 1 or 2 days. Can you represent the other families? The Yang family's old ancestor asked again after hearing this. Ugh. The old man choked. He really couldn't represent this. However, he still summoned up his courage and said to the others, Do you dare to bet with old man Yang? This was a good opportunity. With so many families joining hands, if old man Yang loses, the Yang family will have to listen to our command for 100 years. This is a rare opportunity. Don't let it go easily. With the old man's encouragement, it had to be said that many people were tempted, but they were also quite hesitant. What if this little boy's strength was beyond imagination? At that time, wouldn't their families be at the Yang family's beck and call for 100 years? To be honest, this bet was a little too big. Seeing everyone's hesitation, the Yang family's old ancestor added fuel to the fire and provoked. Forget it. I knew you wouldn't dare. You're just a bunch of cowards. What did you just say? Many of the family's ancestors were angered by the Yang family's ancestor, and they pointed at him and shouted. I said you guys are as timid as mice. The Yang family's old ancestor calmly stated. Bastard. You're the one who's as cowardly as a mouse. Your whole family is as cowardly as a mouse. The old men in the VIP seats, who were over 1,000 years old, were all furious. The Yang family's ancestor had instantly provoked everyone's anger. However, the Yang family's old ancestor knew what was going on, so he wasn't afraid at all and continued to provoke him. Not afraid? You should listen to Old Man Li and fight with the 3 children of the Yang family. If you don't dare to accept the challenge, then you're as timid as a mouse. You. The old men trembled in anger at the Yang family's old ancestor's words, pointing at him for a long time, but they couldn't say a complete sentence. Seeing this, the Yang family's old ancestor continued to provoke. I told you you wouldn't dare. So what? Are you going to bite me? Who says we don't dare? Today my Sun family and the old man from the Li family will fight together. An old man couldn't take it anymore, and he was on fire. And our Wang clan? Another old man said. However, the ancestors of the other families were still hesitant. Seeing that he had successfully provoked the 2 families, the Yang family's ancestor laughed to himself. Hee, this was a good opportunity to dominate the ancient martial arts world. If he couldn't grasp it, he would feel sorry for the Yang family's ancestors. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.